Chapter 1361, Meeting Ai. Li Xiaowei nodded helplessly, while Li Ziming's thoughts grew clearer and clearer. The latter then said softly, "The karmic entanglement between the Buddhist cultivators and our family has grown to this extent. Even the fundamental methods of the Buddhist lands were obtained from Wei's Li. How could they not wish to eradicate us as quickly as possible?" From Lord Tangye to Lord Chuanling, and later to Lord Chunfeng, there are likely those who will go even further in hopes of converting our family into the Buddhist lands like that renowned undefeated King of Brightness. The sight of the various merciful ones when he seemed almost mad was still vivid. If Ling Mei had not been there to hold the line, Li Ziming would likely have been injured again. Once he finished the events, his expression turned cold as he said, "The northern Buddhists are the foremost enemy. With destiny so arranged, even I am in great danger." Li Xiaowei responded with deep concern, "Exactly so. I feel as though I cannot afford to wait even a single day, especially after hearing about those Mahas. Reaching the Purple Mansion realm a day earlier may grant one more measure of leeway." Li Ziming took these words to heart, growing even more wary as he gradually calmed himself. For now, he said little else. He was most eager to learn about Li Xiaowei's progress with the secret techniques and asked with some anticipation, "Given your understanding of the Radiant Essence scripture, the secret techniques may be difficult, but they should not be too much for you. It has been just over 3 years since you left the lake and settled into cultivation. How many have you refined so far?" When Li Ziming brought this up, a bright smile appeared on Li Xiao's face as he replied, "Taoist master, my cultivation was sufficient, so I first tried all 9 secret techniques one by one. Among them, the Imperial Edict has already been completed, and the 100 Arms Arsenal and Great Fisher both have cultivation attained." Already attained cultivation, completed without needing further refinement. Li Ziming wanted to speak but held back, his expression complex, as Li Xiaowei continued, "I cultivated the 100 Arms Arsenal and the Great Fisher on my journey from the Unison Sea, and both achieved results." Li Ziming heard only this single sentence and felt as if struck by lightning. He had incredulity written all over his face as he asked, "Cultivating the 100 Arms Arsenal and the Great Fisher, can those two be cultivated simultaneously?" When Li Ziming was young and full of vigor, he had roughly sensed the difficulty before cultivating Yang Origin, and even estimated that he could complete all 9 techniques within a century. Yet after spending several years to finish Yang Origin, he realized that the secret techniques were mutually exclusive and only grew harder and harder to cultivate. From then on, he abandoned any hope of completing them within 100 years. Not only was full completion impossible, he could barely make progress on the later ones at all. But if they could be cultivated simultaneously, why would he have struggled so much back then, cultivating them one by one and delaying each other? Cultivating them together and completing all 9 at once would have yielded twice the result with half the effort. He asked anxiously, "Since you can cultivate them simultaneously, do not go one by one. The secret techniques repel each other, so the further you go, the slower it becomes. Even with extraordinary innate ability, you will likely spend years upon years by the 6th or 7th technique. Cultivating 7 or 8 together at once would take far less time." Li Xiaowei nodded as he listened and replied, "What the Taoist master considers is indeed correct." This junior had earlier worried that the difficulty of the subsequent methods would increase greatly once the Imperial Edict was completed, and my estimates were very conservative. Yet following your description, I first cultivated the Heavenly Lantern to increase the speed of cultivating other secret techniques, and then discovered that there is no mutual repulsion between the secret techniques. They even support each other, becoming faster the more one cultivates. Li Ziming froze for a moment, left speechless, before belatedly realizing, no wonder you can cultivate them together. Li Xiaowei let him take a moment to steady himself, then continued, "This junior then completed the Imperial Edict and the 100 Arms Arsenal and noticed clear differences. Among the remaining 6 techniques, the Imperial Edict commands the Great Fisher and Yang Origin, while the 100 Arms Arsenal links the Heavenly Lantern, Jewel Steps, and Reversal, producing even greater synergistic effects. As a result, cultivation became even faster. Now that the 2 systems are complete, I have already achieved 7 secret techniques, only Gall, Den Scales, and Red Cicada remain untouched." 7 techniques. "That is correct," Li Xiaowei said solemnly. "The Imperial Edict has immense utility. This junior estimates that if these Imperial Edict techniques were not innately possessed, the difficulty would be much higher. Calculating it carefully, starting from having none at all, it would take around 10 years to reach this level of progress." Yet Li Ziming's innate ability in the bright Yang Dao was already considered quite good even within the Purple Mansion realm, yet completing 3 techniques still took him more than 10 years. Li Ziming's expression grew complicated. Li Xiaowei had been born with 3 secret techniques. Even if all three were treated as innate and counted as completed during cultivation along the Unison Sea route, he had still completed 4 more in just 3 to 4 years. He let out a deep sigh and said, "The fate of one born and nurtured by heaven and earth, then the remaining 2 techniques." Li Xiaowei replied thoughtfully, "This is precisely why I came to seek the Taoist master. The remaining 2 techniques are entirely different. Not only are they extremely difficult to inscribe upon the immortal foundation, they also face considerable resistance. Although they could likely be completed given a few more years, the delay would be far too long. Therefore, I intend not to refine the remaining 2 and instead break through to the Purple Mansion realm here and now." Li Ziming stroked his beard in thought. He quickly recovered from his shock, nodded slightly, and said quietly, "It is just that there are currently no Bright Yang Purple Mansion Realm spirit items available. Fortunately, I still have several Bright Yang Purple Mansion Realm Grand Pills meant to assist cultivation. They are relatively mild and can help you push your immortal foundation into Shenyang." As he finished speaking, he took out a small box from his storage pouch, placed it in his palm, and gently opened it. Inside were 3 snow-white pills that looked as though they were covered in scales. They were Qilin Radiance Illumination pills. At the time, I used a pill refined from 2 Bright Yang treasured panaceas. Once I reached the Juke acupoint, I could rely only on myself. 1 pill should be sufficient for you, but I will leave 2 more with you in case of emergencies. This was a Purple Mansion Realm spirit pill, one vastly superior to the pill Li Ziming had used back then. Even using it would waste a considerable amount of medicinal power. Li Xiaowei frowned and tried to refuse, but Li Ziming forcibly pressed it into his hand. After all, matters concerning the Purple Mansion realm could not afford the slightest negligence. Li Xiaowei had no choice but to accept 1 pill, signaling that it was enough. Before speaking seriously, "I will give the Taoist master a stone talisman. If my breakthrough succeeds, I will crush it immediately as a signal, and you may then come to the lake." He took out the stone talisman, then withdrew a jade slip from his sleeve and handed it to Li Ziming. Li Ziming recognized the jade slip at a glance and immediately felt awkward, replying, "Oh, this thing." This was the detailed exposition of Yang origin that Li Ziming had written at great length years ago, spanning over 100,000 characters. Looking back now, it seemed full of unnecessary verbosity. Yet Li Xiaowei said seriously, "My cultivation insights from this period have already been written down. They are all recorded afterward and compiled into a single work. I ask that the Taoist master keep it carefully as part of our family's foundation." Chapter 1362, Yanhu I. Li Ziming accepted the jade slip and gave it a quick glance. There were only a little over 100,000 additional characters within. He asked, "If you enter seclusion at Zongquan, the spirit vein will still be somewhat insufficient. Fortunately, there is a Qilin Radiance Illumination pill that has been sealed with a spirit formation. With some spirit stones and spiritual resources inside to catalyze spiritual qi, it should suffice for use." Li Xiaowei responded with a quiet acknowledgement and said softly, "Zongquan ultimately lies within the territory of Zhenan Water Mansion. Whether it is Dingjie or the Thunder Pool, both lines of connection are here. It is already the safest place. You may rest assured, Taoist master." Having considered this, he untied the profound pattern bottle at his waist and handed it to Li Ziming, explaining, "This Dharma artifact has been refined for many years and possesses tremendous power. In the hands of a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator, so long as it strikes the enemy, even a direct disciple of the 3 sects would end up either dead or crippled. It would be better to give it to Jiangqian and Quiyuan for protection." Very well, Li Ziming was likely the only one who knew where this object's power truly came from. The profound pattern bottle was forged from astonishing material, and only his valley wind-leading fire could continuously enhance its might. He simply accepted it. After some thought, Li Xiaowei added, "Of our 2 direct descendants in Purple Smoke Gate, Quexi has the better cultivation method and receives more attention. Although Kuai is the elder sister and gentle in temperament, she cultivates the Jade True method. Purple Smoke Gate may neglect her somewhat. I ask the family to keep her in mind." Li Ziming made sure to remember the details. He watched Li Xiaowei bow and withdraw. The grand formation closed, and Li Ziming departed in a streak of light, letting out a faint sigh. One matter can be considered settled. As for the profound pattern bottle, refinement can continue to a point, but if it goes on indefinitely, it would no longer be suitable to bestow upon others. The profound pattern bottle bore the 3 large characters of Li Qianyuan. The Li family knew it was a Dharma artifact. If it could be endlessly refined so that any Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator wielded power approaching the Purple Mansion realm, it would surely attract unwanted attention. The various families are sharp-eyed and must not be underestimated. It should either be bestowed at the peak level of Foundation Establishment Realm, or I keep it for myself. In the hands of a Purple Mansion Realm cultivator, the danger is smaller and it appears reasonable. The effects of valley wind leading fire only grew ever stronger as his strength increased. As a result, Li Ziming's alchemy was advancing rapidly and free from many concerns. His fire control techniques had likely already reached the ears of the supreme Yang Dao lineage and gradually earned him a reputation, which in turn provided cover for the profound patterned bottle. If it must coordinate with Talisman Qi, then Purple Mansion Realm spiritual flames are also key to increasing strength. Yet with water and fire flourishing, such spiritual flames are far from cheap. Some rare ones are even more precious than spirit artifacts. He traversed the great void above the eastern sea on his return, wary of interception by Changxiao. Thus he followed the coastline to Linen Prefecture, passed through the territory of the great Ziyuqi Temple, circled around Hui Mountain, and arrived at the purple smoke-blessed land. He still had matters concerning pills to ask Tinglin about, but he estimated she was still in seclusion and could not be disturbed. The Gates cultivators had not obtained this inheritance either. Since he was already here, he might as well express his concern. Moreover, his two direct descendants were cultivating in the blessed land. Li Ziming had to see them. He brought 2 true profound heart-cleansing pills with him and stopped at the blessed land with the intention to pay a visit. As expected, the one who came to receive him was Qianlizzie of the purple smoke-blessed land. She was strikingly beautiful, dressed in a purple gown, with cultivators on both sides bowing in greeting. In her view, Li Ziming had rushed back for Purple Smoke Gate's sake, so she was deeply grateful. After thanking him twice, she said, "Taoist Master, the blessed land will keep your assistance in heart. Please take the seat of honor." Li Ziming nodded and followed them inward. As expected, a young girl waited within Purple Smoke Gate. She possessed refined features, bright eyes, and a tranquil bearing. She had a sword at her waist and a round Dharma artifact with a gold base and pale blue surface around her neck. She bowed and said softly, "Quexi greets the Taoist Master." Li Ziming was fairly satisfied at first glance. As expected of the supreme Yang Dao lineage, the Dharma artifacts on Li Quexi far surpassed those of the direct descendants by the lake. He responded, "You cultivate swiftly. You have already entered the Qi cultivation realm." At Qianlizzie's signal, Li Quexi stepped forward to Li Ziming's side and said respectfully, in reply to the Taoist Master, "This junior consumed purple smoke Cloudcliff essence. I have now received the secret talisman of the peak and am cultivating beneath the purple platform." For the Purple Smoke Gate, this was treatment on par with an inner sect disciple, a status usually reserved for Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. Li Quexi had only reached the Qi cultivation realm, yet had been admitted within. It was clearly due to the favor Li Ziming had extended. Li Ziming nodded and said nothing more. He met her eyes and asked, "Where is your elder sister?" Heavenly light shone forth in full illumination. Qianlizzie hesitated, but she did not dare to interject. Li Quexi replied respectfully, "Elder sister Kuai is cultivating in the Eastern Sea. My senior brother is there as well. From what he has said, Elder sister Kuai's cultivation has progressed steadily. She has all read. Why reached the 6th stage of the Qi cultivation realm?" Li Ziming nodded without speaking. He understood that the two sisters were not close and sighed inwardly. It is only natural. After long separation, even brothers grow distant, let alone Li Quexi, who by her name alone is clearly one brought into the island later. One cannot expect the two of them to be united. Qianlizzie hurriedly added from the side, "Taoist Master, our Taoist Master is waiting upon the platform." Oh, this truly surprised Li Ziming. Without further ado, he stepped up the stairs and vanished into the hazy purple smoke. Qianlizzie remained where she was. After a long while, she sighed and led Li Quexi back, saying, "The 6th stage is the 6th stage. Why bring up your senior brother? It only makes it seem as though you sisters do not correspond and have grown estranged." Li Quexi bowed in apology and replied, "Master, the Taoist Master cultivates divine ability. Whatever is asked, I answer. Whatever there is to say, I say. The family gave me life and the sect raised me, so I hold gratitude in my heart. He is a Taoist Master. There is nothing to conceal from him." Qianlizzie could only shake her head helplessly and said, "You and your senior brother may share the same mindset, but you handle matters in entirely different ways. Very well, go and continue your cultivation." Purple Qi drifted in misty swirls as Li Ziming stepped onto the purple smoke platform. Tinglin was indeed standing there. She was not wearing her usual autumn yellow dress but had changed into a loose purple robe, lending her a more ethereal air. More importantly, her complexion was rosy, as though she bore no injuries at all. Yet when Li Ziming examined her with the heavenly light at the center of his brows, he faintly discerned a purple command token. He immediately understood that the Tinglin before him had manifested through a spirit artifact. Her true body was not present. Even so, such wondrous means still astonished Li Ziming. What an excellent spirit artifact. Tinglin smiled and did not conceal anything, speaking openly. This is the migration command token. It was given by that cultivator of UA cultivating sect to our sect's founding ancestor. It can now be considered an ancient spirit artifact. Although it possesses no offensive power, it can project a divided shadow across distance. So long as the Great Void remains unbroken, it can manifest an avatar even across 50 kilometers. As expected, there is a distance limit. Communication across the world had become more inconvenient than at any time in history. If there were no distance limit, the usefulness of this spirit artifact would be immeasurable. Yet as Li Ziming pondered, he immediately discovered an even more wondrous aspect. Fellow Taoist, you are healing your injuries at the same time. Correct, Tinglin's attitude was far more cordial than when they first met. She said gently, with this spirit artifact, I can heal while reading scriptures and managing the sect. I simply cannot cultivate. That is remarkable, Li Ziming nodded in amazement. He took out the true profound heart-cleansing pill from his sleeve and said, You are injured after all. I could not set my mind at ease, so I brought some medicine. These two were refined with pristine water and are quite effective. Tinglin accepted them with a light chuckle. You are most courteous. Is there something you require of me? Li Ziming sighed. It concerns the treasured pill Heavenly Quintessence Expelling Pill. Your alchemical writings are profound. I refined that pill and gained greatly from it. I wish to attempt it again myself. Although I do not possess a treasure like Heavenly Origin Essence, I can try refining something similar. That is why I recalled what you once said, that this pill should be taken when breaking through to the mid-stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. I do not know the reason. Is there some supporting method to accompany it? So it is about this, Tinglin smiled. Wait here a moment. She sent someone down to retrieve a jade slip from the treasury and handed it to Li Ziming openly. This method accompanies the pill formula. It is a way of taking the pill summarized by predecessors. Different stages have different methods. It is not strictly required to take it when breaking through to mid-stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. It is simply that the medicinal power is least wasted at this stage, and the immortal foundation is not yet too rigid to change. Jiajing may follow the transformations within and take it accordingly. The Heavenly Quintessence Expelling Pill came with a specific method for enhancing the immortal foundation. Ordinarily, the Purple Smoke Gate would not give such knowledge freely. It was likely repayment for a prior favor. Li Ziming had indeed intended to enhance Li Minggong's Dao Foundation. Moreover, he held more than one heavenly Quintessence Expelling Pill. He thanked Tinglin and she said, I have heard of the affairs in the north. The great Ziyuqi temple cannot lower itself to intervene. At this point, this is the only way it can be. Li Ziming now understood that the one in the north was Li Qianyuan. He did not dare say much and simply replied, You have my thanks. I must refine a spirit embryo and have insights to consolidate in seclusion. I cannot involve myself in northern affairs. After much thought, recalling his earlier plans regarding spiritual flames and feeling short of resources, he seized the opportunity to ask, It is already difficult to obtain treasured panaceas in Jiangnan. Where would one find natural Purple Mansion realm spirit items? Even Foundation Establishment realm spirit items are rare. If one seeks Purple Mansion realm spiritual resources or spiritual flames for alchemy, I do not know where to search. Since attaining Purple Mansion realm, I have never encountered Purple Mansion realm spiritual resources. Refining pills has not been convenient. Tinglin shook her head and replied, This matter is indeed troublesome. Purple Mansion realm spiritual resources and spiritual flames are not found in ordinary places. Though Jiangnan's spiritual energy is abundant, cultivators are everywhere. Any good spirit vein or earth vein is claimed early for cultivation. How could such things gestate? If you seek Purple Mansion realm materials nearby, there are only two places. One is the Eastern Sea, while the other is the southern border. The Dragon Clan is domineering and difficult to negotiate with. The southern border, however, is filled with mountain strongholds. Moreover, the southern border stretches southwest along the coast to the land of Shendu. Beyond that strait lies a vast jungle not smaller than Wuan Yue in area, scarcely trodden by humans. Belongs entirely to the demon kings of the southern border. Most Dao lineages of Wuan Yue maintain communication with the southern border and rely on them to gather Purple Mansion realm spirit items. Humans are adept in myriad arts, so exchanging with them is quite convenient. She reminded him, Is Mount Quanwu not quite near my blessed land? The Demonkind call it Mount Zuiliu. Many of the demonic creatures there fled from the southern border. Choose one capable and have it gather intelligence and broker transactions for you in the southern border. The efficiency may not be high, but there will always be gains over the years. Chapter 1363, Yanhu II. Li Ziming felt enlightened and nodded repeatedly, truly ingenious. It is the southern border after all. No matter whom I send, none would move as conveniently as a demonic creature. Being native-born, they understand the customs and even the demon kings. Exactly, Tinglin said casually, especially in these years. The northern part of the southern border borders Jiangnan and is influenced by the spiritual aura of Dwelling Heart that charges profundity and the 12 essences. Fire virtue has surged greatly. Whether it is spiritual materials or spiritual flames, this is their most abundant period. As for the southern part of the southern border, its spiritual aura is influenced by Stone Pond and forms the orthodox wood spiritual aura of Ge form pair. Spiritual herbs will not be lacking. Tinglin reminded him, such spiritual aura only lasts for a limited number of years. This is precisely the best time for your needs. Send someone as soon as possible. Each day you delay is a day less for gathering. Li Ziming nodded repeatedly and thought to himself, it is fortunate that I asked. If I waited until something changed with the true monarch, or if the grand Taoist master of the great Ziyuqi temple fell, or someone else broke through and altered the spiritual aura, the opportunity would have been lost. He indicated his understanding. Tinglin escorted him out with visible worry, clearly still concerned about affairs in Jiangbei. Li Ziming wasted no time. He traveled by light, passed beyond the purple smoke-blessed land, and after calculating the distance, reached Mount Quanwu in the central region of Yue State in only a short span. Mount Quanwu had gained many demonic creatures in recent years, most of them refugees from the southern border. Though generally only at Foundation Establishment realm, many possessed notable abilities. It had once been the backyard for the Azure Pond sect's demon-slaying efforts. Now, neglected, it was filled with billowing demonic smoke when viewed from above. Most demonic creatures of the Eastern Sea had backing, and those in the Outer Sea kept their heads low. Only the Azure Pond sect possessed such a treasure basin. Li Ziming did not have many essence-gathering pills and still had rituals to conduct, so he descended in a streak of light and landed among the upper mountain ridges. Black light flickered in the highest demon den as two demonic sea Reachers were locked in fierce combat amid rolling black smoke. A dog demon with bristling fur fought intensely against a wolf-like demon that had taken human form. Li Ziming glanced over them. The dog demon was at a disadvantage. The wolf demon held the upper hand and retained human form, its aura thick with bloodlust from countless devoured humans. Li Ziming manifested in heavenly light and stood firm within the rolling black wind. The two demons turned pale. Li Ziming did not bother with words. He simply raised his hand and lightly lifted. In an instant, the wolf demon was forced back into its original form and fell into his grasp, unable to move. The dog demon immediately grew meek and cried out, "My lord, we have followed Tiger King's teachings and have not eaten humans." Li Ziming paid no mind to talk of Tiger Kings and asked casually, "Oh, this senior demon you speak of, did he flee from the southern border?" The dog demon hurriedly replied, "My lord's divine ability knows all. Tiger King indeed fled from the southern border. He received guidance from a great figure at Moongaze Lake and turned over a new leaf. He occupies a peak in the mountains, accumulating merit and protecting the people. He even flies my banner." This was no small matter. Li Ziming paused, intrigued, and replied with a faint smile, "Very well, on which peak is he?" The dog demon had little confidence. Few demons on Mount Quanwu truly believed Tiger King's claims. He only wished to escape quickly. Hearing the question, he immediately sold out his king and pointed in the direction of his peak. In the next moment, the world spun before his eyes, and they were in front of the indicated peak. Pitch darkness stretched before them, with only two faint points of light. They had not merely reached the peak, but had already arrived deep within the demon den. Divine ability, so this is the Purple Mansion realm. Li Ziming glanced at the cave dwelling's door and lifted his chin. The demonic creature rushed forward in a cold sweat, pushed open the door, and dropped to his knees at the side. A cold voice rang out from within, "Why do you enter without announcing yourself?" Seated upon the central throne was a broad-faced, black-haired middle-aged man. His features bore a domineering air. He wore a dark robe, and beside him stood a pure white long spear. His pupils were jet black as he cast a sharp glance at the door. The radiant colors of divine ability were instantly reflected in his black pupils. In the next instant, the middle-aged man tumbled from the throne with a thud, rolling several times across the ground. His robe slipped loose, and the white spear fell aside. He scrambled forward with a fawning tone and cried out, this lesser demon Yan who greets the Taoist master, greetings to the one with divine ability. I failed to welcome you from afar. I am ashamed and dare not rise." Yan who recognized the demonic creature dangling from the Taoist master's grasp in one glance. They had fought for decades, yet Yan Hu had never been able to subdue him. He had been bearing increasing pressure. Now, he was doomed beyond hope. The Taoist master cast him a single glance, and Yan Hu felt a faint pain course through him. His life lay at another's whim. Trembling, he forced himself to speak. This lesser demon has had dealings with a great figure at Moongaze Lake. I have never eaten humans. I beg the Taoist master to spare my humble life for that connection. The Taoist master in white gold Taoist robes smiled. Go on. I was not aware that anyone at my lake had dealings with you. Those words silenced the chamber. The demonic creature suddenly understood. This is Taoist master Zheajing. The tiger demon broke into a torrent of sweat, racked his mind, and kowtowed repeatedly. Back then, Taoist King Hung from the lake came to Quanwu and instructed this lesser demon in combat arts. I benefited greatly and was deeply grateful, so I offered a blood sun fruit in return. The Great One did not leave a name, only saying that she had come from the north and that we might meet again. This lesser demon longed for that day, yet never knew the origin. Later, when the Great One's name shook the rivers and thunder resounded above the waters, I heard the news and learned she was a Taoist from the lake. Since then, I have remained diligent day and night, waiting for the Great One's arrival. Blood sun fruit. Li Ziming indeed remembered that spiritual fruit. Back when the Li family had not yet risen and was in decline, they had sought to befriend Li Yancheng, father of Li Quanto of the same Wei's Li line. They had used this rare Jiangnan blood sun fruit. The blood sun fruit had been obtained by Li Qinghong from Yanhu, handed to Li Zizhai, and ultimately exchanged for an essence-gathering pill. So the thread of fate was tied at that time. Li Ziming knew very well that the demonic creature was skirting the details and speaking vaguely. He had only dared to speak of this connection after Li Ziming had attained the Purple Mansion realm, yet the spirit item had indeed been taken from this fellow back then, which had been a calamity fallen from the sky for him. He asked amusedly, "Do you still regret losing the blood sun fruit?" The demonic creature glanced at his expression and hurriedly kowtowed, nearly in tears as he said, "Had I not offered that fruit and brushed against a trace of immortal radiance, this lesser demon would have been taken for pill refinement 10 years ago. How could I have lived to see this day?" Li Ziming had rarely encountered such a smooth-tongued demonic creature. He took a seat on the throne and considered as he said, "What offense did you commit to hide here at Mount Zuiliu?" The tiger demon hurriedly said, "This lesser demon was once part of a mountain patrol in a region of the southern border. On one occasion I mistakenly delivered provisions, causing General White Longur to dine unpleasantly. Knowing I had erred, I happened to encounter a great battle among the kings above, in which White Longur was slain. I escaped disaster and gained spirituality, yet the one who took his place was his younger brother Black Longur. I hardened my heart, seized the spirit items I had been transporting, and fled overnight to Mount Zuiliu. Now 70 years have passed." He lowered his head as he said, "The matter is long past, yet I dare not return. The spirit items I seized back then were either used for cultivation or taken by passing cultivators. They have long been exhausted over the years." Li Ziming found it trivial and said casually, "It has been 70 years. Are you still familiar with the southern border?" Yanhu's eyes lit up, as if sensing opportunity. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Though I left, I remain familiar with the 5 ridges north of Shawang. With some spirit items in hand, forging connections would be extremely simple." "That is enough," Li Ziming nodded and said, "I once said I would grant you some benefits, and my family does not break its word. I require a demonic creature to carry messages to the southern border. Follow me." Yanhu was overwhelmed with ecstasy. He crawled forward and kowtowed respectfully, saying, "I am willing to serve the Taoist master unto death." Yanhu had lived a precarious life for decades. Passing cultivators had attempted to kill him more than once. Had it not been for his own strength, his willingness to humble himself, the dispersal of his wealth, and even borrowing the names of others for protection, he would not have survived to this day. How many days could he expect to live otherwise? Yet once he attached himself to a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, even a Peak Foundation establishment realm demon general would address him respectfully as Lord. If he bore orders, he could stride through the southern border with his head held high. He had seen how those demonic creatures who served Purple Mansion realm figures carried themselves in the southern border. He was nearly moved to tears with joy. Li Ziming lifted him with a sweep of light. The dog demon at the side stared dumbfounded as he thought to himself, so there truly was a connection. Then why remain here suffering all this time? Yanhu trembled with joy behind him and paid the other demon no heed, only hoping he would not try to cling to him. Li Ziming, however, had his own considerations. It was true that there was a strand of fate between him and Yanhu, yet that alone was not enough reason to take this demon in. First, this demonic creature carried little murky chi. He had clearly refrained from devouring humans all these years. Second, he was quick-witted and experienced, making it more convenient in handling affairs. There was another crucial point. This demonic creature was of the hurricane ghost yin. He had obtained many Miffin Dao lineages, whether in spell arts or escape spells, yet he currently had no cultivators of the Hurricane Ghost Yin. Though demonic creatures of common bloodlines were generally considered inferior, this demon's cultivation was not weak. He had already reached the late Foundation establishment realm. With some training in these arts, he could prove useful. As they flew into the great void, Li Ziming raised his brows slightly and said quietly, "When I send you to the southern border, you will carry my divine ability imprint and visit the various demons. You are to gather news for me regarding spirit items and spiritual flames. Do you understand?" Yanhu nodded repeatedly and answered with utmost respect, "Taoist master, I have seen such matters before and understand them fairly well. I will not disappoint you." "Good." Li Ziming glanced at him and finished, "You will represent my house. Once we return to the lake, you will receive the 6 dams secret art of my island, learn 1 or 2 escape spells and footwork techniques, and have someone fit you with proper garments and armor. Then you will be sent to the southern border." Chapter 1364, Crimson Light Eye. Yanhu stood within the radiance, gazing at the pitch-black great void he had never seen before, and could not help but begin to ponder in his heart, according to what a few colleagues said, when one is captured by a Taoist master, one is to revert to one's original form and serve as a mount. Am I being tactless by remaining in human form? But this one moves without a fixed trace. I have never heard news of him before, and I do not know whether he already has a mount. If he rides me back, I must not offend another colleague before we even reach the lake. He knew well that he was not irreplaceable, and thus grew even more cautious. As he glanced uneasily around him, he felt that the heavenly light beneath his feet did not seem sufficient for his true form to stand upon. Yet while he was still mulling over these thoughts, they had already broken through the great void, and a rippling lake surface shimmered into view. A vast island rose out of the center of the lake. Columns of purple gold rose upon it, some tall and some short, their surfaces covered in intricate, solemn, and majestic patterns. Cultivators rose and fell across the island in constant motion, creating a scene of lively activity. Li Ziming swept the area with his spiritual sense. A grand hall was under construction upon the island. He flew straight toward the viewing pavilion. Spiritual flames blazed fiercely upon the viewing pavilion. Golden and purple fire intertwined as streams of radiant fire, and baleful chi poured into it without cease, stirring wave after wave of surging force. 6 Foundation establishment realm cultivators sat cross-legged upon the platform, circulating their mana to refine the spirit embryo. Yanhu shrank his neck slightly at such a magnificent spectacle, as though he could feel the suffocating aura permeating the flames, and did not dare to utter a sound. As Li Ziming had expected, Li Jianqian was indeed present. Seeing Li Ziming approach, he stepped forward and bowed, "Greetings, Taoist Master. Taoist Master, Senior Chu has arrived at the viewing pavilion." Although Chu Minglian was advanced in age, his arms remained robust, and his build was likely comparable to Ding Weizeng. Draped in red robes with iron implements fastened at his waist, he stepped forward and bowed, "Greetings, Taoist Master." Chu Minglian could be considered a venerable elder of the Li family, having witnessed several generations. In earlier days, when they met upon the river, Li Ziming would have addressed him as senior. Now that Li Ziming had attained the rank of Taoist master, it was only natural that Chu Minglian bowed to him instead. Li Ziming simply used his divine ability to lift him up and replied, "Elder, there is no need for such courtesy." Chu Minglian appeared deeply moved and said softly, "When I was young, I forged artifacts upon this island at the heart of the lake. I never imagined that after more than 100 years, heaven and earth would be overturned, divine abilities refined and transformations wrought. Yet now that I return to this lake, I am once again here to forge artifacts." Li Ziming smiled in response. He took out a jade slip containing the designs he had conceived earlier from within his sleeve and handed it to the elder, saying, "Elder, please have a look first." This was naturally not the divine technique of pavilion view, refining within fire. That art was far too difficult for those at the Foundation establishment realm. Instead, it was Li Ziming's own calculations. He beckoned Li Jianqian over, casually handed him the demonic beast, and instructed, "Summon the 12. This tiger demon was brought back from Mount Quanwu. He will be of great use later. Use the 6 dams life-matching unique technique to subdue him first, then teach him some spell arts." Li Jianqian immediately nodded and led the tiger demon away. Li Ziming turned and said softly, "I invited you here this time for the sake of this spirit embryo. Others may not understand the Chu family's artifact forging methods, but my family knows them well. They are of the finest rank I have ever seen. In those days, Taoist Master Tiank also had He Ting refine his spirit embryo. Your craftsmanship surpasses his, so there should be no issue." Aside from that, the spirit embryo refined by Taoist Master Tiank had been no simple matter. He had only begun forging it after breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm. It had been nurtured by the Dao lineages of 45 families, along with a century of immortal foundation cultivation from a foundation establishment realm cultivator. In the end, even He Ting himself had been sacrificed to it. One could see how much effort had gone into it. After all, it was the Golden Feather sect. It was Kli. RLY, not something a method like divine technique of pavilion view, refining within fire could compare to. The Li family's project was naturally far less difficult. Chu Minglian stroked his beard as he read the jade slip in his hand, nodding silently before replying. The ingenuity of this pavilion's design is truly astonishing. If it is a matter of refining radiant fire and supplementing it with baleful qi, I can certainly make the proper arrangements. However, this bright yang spiritual essence may be beyond my ability. Li Ziming nodded and answered, I will personally refine that with my divine ability. I am not proficient in artifact forging, so I will be relying on the profundity of ancient techniques and the augmentation of this great tower. You will tend the fire and add the baleful qi, guiding the hammering process. I will assist you with my divine ability to perfect the spirit embryo. Chu Minglian immediately let out a breath of relief. Though he had accumulated considerable wealth over the years, he could never afford to compensate for the loss of a spirit embryo. Li Ziming, however, was filled with anticipation. Rising into the air on a streak of light, he drew a round stone as dark as black jade from his sleeve. Within the round stone shimmered a brilliant golden hue. As Li Ziming explained its origin to Chu Minglian, the old man first froze in surprise, then let out a deep sigh and replied, I am not afraid of making a fool of myself before Taoist master. In my earlier years, I encountered guarding toward the white yang. I have some experience with it. Oh, Li Ziming reacted swiftly and immediately understood, pondering inwardly, Chu Yi, that's right. This old man, like Qianlizi, was one of the legacies left behind by that lord's generation. When the various families divided the spoils, Purple Smoke Gate took Qianlizi, while the Ning family took this old man. This was no small matter. Li Ziming inclined his head and listened as the old man continued. That lord's weapon was forged with heavenly yang-colored copper as its core. It incorporated radiant sky stone and guarding toward the white yang, and was inscribed with white blood sap. At the very beginning, it was nothing more than a piece of spirit copper. He obtained a fragment of guarding toward the white yang no larger than a fingernail and had me fuse it within. At the time, I was astonished at the depth of his fortune, yet I did not realize it was far greater still. Li Ziming had heard from Li Xiaowei that Chu Yi was also Wei's grand ancestor. He was inwardly startled. However, since both Qianlizi and Chu Minglian had been entrusted and used without issue, he remained silent and continued listening. Chu Minglian smiled faintly and said, He has now gone to Mount Luoxia. There has been no news for so many years. I understand that he has severed worldly ties and does not wish to see us. If Taoist master ever meets him, please ask about his cultivation. Just one word will suffice. How many divine abilities has he achieved? When I offer incense to my ancestors, I would like to add a bit of joy. Li Ziming fell silent before replying softly, He is now a lord of Mount Luoxia, one of the highest of all. I fear I may not even have the chance to meet him. Chu Minglian waved his hands repeatedly and said, My apologies, my apologies. Li Ziming gently tossed the black jade. The resplendent radiant light flowed into the flames like water. Layer upon layer of heavenly light rose into the air. The 12 subsidiary towers lit up, and the guest cultivators channeling mana were immediately cut off and forced to withdraw. For a moment, the flames were suppressed, revealing the ritual ruler within. Even when used merely for nurturing, true fire was not to be underestimated in power. Yet the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers was indeed of exceptional quality. Despite being tempered by true fire for this long, it had only turned faintly red. When the spiritual essence fell upon the ruler, it emitted a sharp hissing sound. Chapter 1365, Crimson Light, II. Multicolored clouds billowed upward at once. Golden radiance blazed brilliantly, and the cries of cicadas and roars of beasts echoed across the sky. Li Ziming watched with an aching heart. I can only hope that after consuming such a portion of spiritual essence, it does more than merely increase the speed. Chu Minglian pressed 2 fingers together and expelled true fire. Li Ziming glanced down, then invoked his divine ability to raise the profound fire of the 3 phases guard and joined in refining the Dharma artifact. The Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators within the 12 subsidiary towers also took their seats and began channeling their mana. Boom! Such a method could only be employed because a spirit embryo existed between a Dharma artifact and a spirit artifact. Streak after streak of golden runes descended upon the ruler O. F manifested mountains and rivers and embedded themselves one by one. Chu Minglian's skill was truly formidable. Though modest in speech, his ability was evident the moment he acted. With the support of Li Ziming's divine ability and true fire, he moved with perfect ease, inscribing runes fluidly and without hesitation. As light and shadow interwove across the platform, the runes upon the jade ruler gradually solidified. Li Ziming withdrew his hand and stepped back. Chu Minglian remained suspended in the air, directing the gathered mana of the others as he focused intently on the nurturing process. Members of the Li family had already prepared numerous bright yang spirit items and fire baleful qi, delivering them with pills for restoring mana. These spirit items were not particularly precious, yet some were difficult to obtain. It was only because the Li family was deeply rooted and maintained ties with the surrounding families that they could acquire them so swiftly. Li Ziming smoothed his sleeve. Merely initiating this process had already cost him nearly half a month, yet the gains were considerable. Chu Minglian's status is indeed different. His methods far exceed my expectations. With the spiritual essence and the lake's resources supplied in full, it should take less than 2 years. The final quality may even surpass my earlier estimates. In a few more days, we can withdraw the personnel and restore the rotation to 2 shifts. He entrusted the viewing pavilion to Chu Minglian, feeling greatly relieved, then turned and rode a streak of light back toward Qingdu. Li Ziming had originally come to bring good news to Li Xuanxuan. As he descended upon Talisman Peak in Qingdu, he heard a burst of laughter. Raising his brow, he looked up and saw a young man in red standing outside the courtyard. The young man held a jeweled fan and carried himself with a somewhat elegant air, though he wore powder on his face and struck an affected pose. With both hands raised in salute, he called out, old elder, please hear me out." Li Ziming recognized his grandson. When the Li family had recounted the events of these past years, he had heard the story of this boy once assisting Zhuluo, which had earned him a rare nod of approval from Li Ziming. He was not in a hurry and paused to listen. Li Xuanxuan hurried down the stairs, staff in hand, and scolded, "Off to the pleasure boats again. I told you clearly yesterday that 60 is a life and death barrier. Whether you wish to or not, you must cultivate the final stages of Qi cultivation realm. You must break through." Li Zhuming's innate ability was mediocre and comparable to his elder brother Li Zhufeng. Li Zhufeng had stagnated, but Li Zhuming could at least still cultivate. To squander it so carelessly made Li Ziming frown as he stepped forward silently, listening to Li Zhuming plead, No, old elder, you misunderstand. A new play is being performed on the painted boat. It tells the story of Yu Mugao. Such a bold drama is rare. Our household does not lack a few talismans today. Please come and watch. It is better than sitting idly in the courtyard." Li Xuanxuan was about to rebuke him when he suddenly saw Li Ziming. Joy lit his face as he descended the steps. Li Zhuming misunderstood and hurried forward to assist, only to hear a respectful voice call out, "Grandfather." The white golden-robed figure had stepped forward and helped Li Xuanxuan down. Li Zhuming immediately dropped to his knees with a thud and kowtowed as he said, "Greetings, Taoist master." Li Xuanxuan's eyelids twitched in alarm, fearing Li Ziming might be angered. He stepped forward and barked, "Go back and cultivate." Li Ziming clasped his hands behind his back and watched without temper. He walked inside with Li Xuanxuan and took a seat. Li Zhuming refused to give up. Having finally seen Li Ziming, he shuffled forward on his knees and kowtowed in the courtyard. "Taoist master, you move without a fixed trace and are rarely seen. I waited for a long time at Jijing Mountain but did not encounter you. Father has not seen you for many years." At the mention of Li Chengzhai, his eldest son who possessed no spiritual orifice, Li Ziming's expression cooled. Someone brought tea, and he accepted it before setting it aside, saying only, "You have come to ask something of me." Li Xuanxuan gathered his sleeves and sighed as Li Zhuming began to weep, saying, "Father's health has been poor of late. He survives only through the aid of cultivators. He may not have many years left. Each time you depart, it is for 3 or 5 years. I only hope that your immortal presence might briefly grace him and allow him to see you once more." Li Ziming seemed struck by a thought. He turned his gaze aside and looked down at the steps, taking a sip of tea. Li Xuanxuan's tone softened as he waved his hand and said, "Go on now." The young man withdrew reluctantly, his red robes vanishing into the hills. Li Xuanxuan said, "For all his faults, the boy is filial. His mind is firm and he has his own opinions. He is likable, and with you here, none beneath dare slight him." Li Ziming shook his head and replied, "Who among them lacks opinions? There is Chengqi and there is Zhufeng. The first lineage has many children and all have their own minds. What is difficult is unity. Moreover, in such a position, if he cannot even seize the opportunity to attempt the foundation establishment realm, there is no need to indulge him." Yet he spoke one truth. Grandfather should watch a play and listen to music now and then, and worry less. He did not appear shaken by the news of Li Chengzhai as he recounted recent events in full. Li Xuanxuan alternated between sitting and standing as he listened. Finally, he collapsed into his seat, tears streaming down his aged face in overwhelming joy. The ancestors truly protect us. If not for King Hung, our family, newly risen as an immortal family, might have fallen again. The old man stroked his beard for a long while before composing himself and speaking solemnly. Only a few need know. It must not be publicized. Li Ziming rose and paced the courtyard, hesitating. In the end, he felt the lake lay too close to the north and chose not to mention the matter of the true monarch. Just then, thunder roared and a storm swept up outside. Sensing something, he stepped out and gazed northward. The darkened sky was confined to Jiangnan, while Jiangbei remained bright, tinged with a hazy red glow. The red hue stretched into the heavens, and faint blossoms of pale crimson light descended one after another. Thunder grew louder still. Li Ziming's figure dissolved into heavenly light and reappeared swiftly upon the northern bank. Cautious, he did not even approach the riverbank. The hazy red glow nearly blanketed all of Jiangbei, standing in stark opposition to the torrential rain over Jiangnan. A youth cloaked in flames stood among the clouds, radiating boundless light. He held a long sword and pointed it proudly at the heavens. The black-robed cultivators before him were engulfed in surging crimson light and could not move. His voice rang like thunder through the sky. Locust Soul Hall. It is thanks to you that I have achieved the Foundation Establishment realm. All the humiliation I once endured will be repaid 100-fold today. Li Ziming's long-held suspicion was finally confirmed, and he sighed inwardly. To speak such ruthless words upon merely achieving the Foundation Establishment realm, to claim that one man alone will make Locust Soul Hall repay 100-fold. Who else could it be but that Lord? Chapter 1366, The Real and Fake Profound Command Token, I. Li Ziming had only just halted in midair when snow and rain began to swirl. Ningguan appeared beside him in white robes, her willow brows slightly knit, worry etched across her face. She cupped her hands toward Li Ziming and said softly, "Fellow Taoist Jiajing, the Lord has formed an immortal foundation. From the look of this celestial phenomenon, it is dry fire." Li Ziming now understood this person's identity. Mount Luoxia must have influenced this grand ancestor emperor not to cultivate bright yang. Once he cultivated his intrinsic divine ability, Luoxia would be unable to suppress him, even if they possessed 1,000 stratagems. Back then, Chuyi cultivated radiant fire, which was somewhat closer in nature. Now he cultivates dry fire. Though it belongs to fire virtue, it is not as intimate as radiant fire. It is acceptable, yet it still may lead him astray. The two Taoist masters watched from afar. After the shout from Jiangbei rang through the sky, several figures surged upward with fierce momentum. Their leader was broad and muscular, gripping a jet-black hammer, his face savage as he bellowed, "Surnamed Lin, you have quite the nerve. We are of the Miffin Dao lineage, and you dare act so arrogantly. If not for our hall master being in secluded cultivation, how could you have succeeded?" With Taoist Bai of Locust Soul Hall dead, no one below knew whether the favors owed among the various Purple Mansion realm Dao lineages still counted. They trembled with fear, yet they were already riding a tiger and unable to dismount. They dared not abandon the territory and flee, nor did they dare spread the news. Everything was kept secret as they put on a show. Li Ziming and the others naturally knew the truth and watched their performance with cold eyes. The flames around Lin Feng receded, finally revealing his figure, covered in pale white armor. His form shimmered faintly as he lifted his sword. Two flames, one pale white and the other light red, coiled along his body, making him appear awe-inspiring. Li Ziming did not look closely, listening instead to the voice resounding through the sky. "Ridiculous, a gathering of devil cultivators dares to claim inheritance of the immortal Dao lineage. If not for Taoist Bai's bluster and deception, how would you have had the chance to act so brazenly?" He let out a cold laugh and shouted, "Why not reveal the Gui Dusk profound token so that we may be convinced?" He spoke with absolute confidence. Those around him merely took it as provocation, but the two Taoist masters at the horizon both froze for a moment. They exchanged glances and saw the same helplessness in each other's eyes. It seems it truly has fallen into the Lord's hands. The burly man from Jiangbei fell silent. He raised his twin hammers, circulated his immortal foundation, and struck without warning. Though the opponent was a late-stage Foundation Establishment realm cultivator, the youth showed no fear. He lifted his long sword and drove it straight toward the man's face, saying coldly, "A trifling trick." Pale red flames surged upward, shooting straight into the heavens. They exchanged several blows within just a few breaths, but then the youth's clear, ringing voice echoed across the sky, "If not now, then when?" Several streaks of light suddenly flared among the devil cultivators below, striking their own fellow disciples. Black chi dispersed and white light burst forth. Chaos erupted in an instant. "Wugui Tianfu, you guys. Song family, you actually. While the capital immortal Dao cannot spare attention, you side with this bastard." Lin Feng stood proudly. A woman rode the wind and descended beside him, wrapping herself around his arm, her eyes filled with infatuation as she smiled. "You brat, you really did reach the Foundation establishment realm." This woman was none other than long missing and rumored injured Song Yunbai of the capital Immortal Dao. How also? The youth stood with his sword held crosswise. Blazing flames reduced the opponent's black chi to ashes. His other hand steadily released waves of dense black and white radiance as he held up a mysterious command token etched with intricate patterns. The waves of black and white brilliance dimmed even the flames in heaven and earth. The gathered cultivators below, who had assembled at some unknown moment, stared in shock and cried out in unison, "The gooey dusk profound token." This sight caused the many devil cultivators present to freeze. They instinctively scattered. The burly man before them panicked and shouted, "That is fake." He gritted his teeth and finally drew a token from his sleeve. Radiance burst forth at once, black and white intertwining again. It was another gooey dusk profound token. "My lord regards me as a confidant and personally entrusted this to me before entering seclusion. Cultivators of the hall, obey and kill this man together." The brilliance of the two command tokens intertwined in the sky. The one in the burly man's hand shone more resplendently, casting a hazy glow across the heavens and suppressing the radiance from the other side. By contrast, the token in Lin Feng's hand appeared somewhat mottled and worn, lacking that same grandeur. Moreover, the token in the burly man's hand most likely came from Taoist Bai, who had been recognized by the various families. It naturally carried greater credibility. Confusion spread across the battlefield. Those who had been persuaded by Lin Feng quickly gathered to shield him. Li Ziming watched in silence. Ningguan let out a soft sigh. His excellency is indeed formidable. He truly obtained it. Li Ziming glanced her way in inquiry, and Ningguan replied in a gentle voice, "The Miffin Dao lineage indeed possesses a profound token. We have only seen its image in ancient texts. This one was crafted by Sister Tinglin through a trusted friend. Though it matches the description and even incorporates many elements of the Miffin Dao lineage, it is ultimately not the genuine article. Our original thought was that the Lord's inherent rank is extremely high, even if what he held was false, with fate's favor upon him, though it would not deceive the Miffin Dao lineage, it would at least draw out clues and grant him entry. We did not expect that the true token had already fallen from the great void long ago, or that someone had delivered it into the Lord's hands. It must have come into his possession back when he was still in the Qi cultivation realm." Li Ziming nodded at once. The ancient token had not been made for display, and naturally was not as dazzling as the one Tinglin crafted in this era. Hope stirred within him as he asked, "Then what of this Miffin Dao lineage?" Regret colored Ningguan's tone as she said, "It is difficult to control the situation now. The subsequent transformation of the Miffin inheritance is not something we can influence. Let us watch for now. It should not spread south." Ningguan held little interest in the Miffin Dao lineage. Li Ziming, however, possessed an important fragment within a grotto heaven and was unwilling to let this opportunity pass, yet knowing what had occurred in the north, he did not dare act rashly or reveal his thoughts. He merely nodded slightly and said calmly, "That would be best." The battle at Jiangbei grew ever more intense as the two conversed. Li Ziming's brows knit tightly as he watched spiritual energy churn across the heavens. After a while, a surge of black chi rushed skyward. It was clear that someone had fallen. Soon the crimson light retreated, withdrawing westward. The people of Locust Soul Hall were filled with unease and hesitated rather than pursued, allowing the group to withdraw in a grand display. Ningguan gazed into the distance and let out a long breath. Fortunately, the Lord has already reached the Foundation establishment realm. It is not like the Qi cultivation realm where one could disperse cultivation and start anew. Having cultivated the dry fire Dao, once he received its profundity, he stepped onto the road of its corresponding divine ability. He is no longer as terrifying as before. He still carries a thread of fate upon him, and no one can stand in his way, yet he no longer possesses the power to seize fruition attainment from afar and overturn all with a single thought. These words were precious information. Li Ziming listened carefully and pondered inwardly. Could it be that he forged a dry fire Dao foundation and thus deviated from the bright Yang Dao, which brought about this transformation? Otherwise, with that former gaze that could seize a divine soul at a glance, who would dare approach him? Yet compared to such news, the attitude of Mount Luoxia in the north mattered more. Unease stirred within Li Ziming as he said quietly, "Now that the Lord has reached the Foundation establishment realm, he may come to my lake to fetch Fei Qingya. Do you know of this matter? It should also be mentioned to Ziyuqi Dao." No matter how much Li Ziming longed for the fragment of the Miffin inheritance, he understood that the true monarch's journey south was perilous. If it was mishandled, it could plunge his family into irredeemable ruin. Li Ziming raised his sleeves and cupped his hands. I may need to make a trip to the southern border. As for your arrangements, will you require my assistance? Chapter 1367, The Real and Fake Profound Command Token, II. Ningguang nodded. After a moment of hesitation, she finally asked, the Southern Sea has been unstable of late. If you have the time, I would ask you to make a trip there on my behalf. I remember, Li Ziming nodded repeatedly as he replied. A few days ago, Senior Kueki mentioned it as well. Maha Baoking of Great Konghai Temple at Stone Pond in the Southern Sea. I have kept it in mind. Heavenly light flickered between his brows as he suddenly added, he has a merciful one under him named Zhuzhen, who once made a move against my elder brother. Zhuzhen was not a particularly formidable figure. Ningguang did not wish to sow discord and only feared he might fall into an ambush, so she said tactfully, Zhuzhen actually feared you, so he secretly held back. In doing so, he enhanced Zijai's reputation. Li Ziming replied quietly, that was not a good thing, since there is no reputation worth enhancing. A tall tree draws the wind, especially one built upon a Buddhist cultivator. They also claim my family descends from the Wei's Li lineage. Once such destiny is forged, who knows what variables may arise in the future. He shook his head and said with a faint smile, it is just as well that he fears me. If anything had truly happened, I would not be speaking with this attitude today. Though his smile was faint, the killing intent within it was anything but small. Who was Li Zijai? Of the four Zais, only Li Ziming and Li Zijai remained. Li Ziming had been carried in his elder brother's arms since he was a child. Though they had been separated for many years and were not as close as he had been with Li Zijun, their bond was not to be underestimated. What happened to Li Zijun had not been justified. Zio's shooting had come in person back then to question him. Since Li Ziming had given him an answer, he could only bury his hatred for Crimson Reef Island deep within. Now another grievance had been added. If Zhuzhen had killed Li Zijai and formed a blood feud with the Azure Pond sect, and the Li family Baoking would not have the divine ability of the former Great Konghai Temple master to protect him. Ningguang nodded and said softly, if you travel to the southern border, you may visit fellow Taoists Zhosheng and Xianchen. They are connections left behind by Senior Yuangxiu and have poor relations with Great Konghai Temple. Very well, Li Ziming stood with his hands behind his back, appearing unconcerned, yet he sighed inwardly. He understood that the arrangements had been set from the moment Kueki had brought him back. Whether matters at the Azure Pond sect and the Southern Sea were urgent was secondary. The key was to move him, a descendant of Wei's Lei who cultivated Bright Yang, away. Various families did not know how much control Mount Luoxia held over this grand ancestor emperor. Perhaps Luoxia even disdained the Li family entirely. Perhaps it cared for no one aside from Li Xiaowei. Perhaps if Li Ziming were to speak before Lin Feng, he might explode into fragments before uttering a word. Yet the Li family at least served one clear purpose. It revealed who harbored restless intentions toward the grand ancestor emperor. It was clear that Mount Luoxia's prestige across the north, and even the mainland, remained formidable. Only the Dragon Clan had made a move. Even though Luoxia's relationship with the Dragon Clan had never been cordial, the latter could only lurk furtively within the Eastern Sea. Whether it was Li Ziming himself, the supreme Yang Dao lineage, or even the Golden Feather sect, none could afford to take risks. As his thoughts reached this point, clarity dawned within him. Even without the affair in the north, I would likely have returned to Jiangnan now. When the true monarch visits the lake, whether as a guest at the Purple Smoke Gate or in Hui Mountain, I must remain under their watch. Though the true monarch is merely going to the lake to fetch a woman, and his impression of my family is not poor, and though he is less harmful to innocents after reaching Foundation establishment realm, there is always the unexpected. What if something goes wrong? If the true monarch harbors displeasure and does something at Moongay's lake, they must restrain me at once to prevent me from rushing to aid in a moment of rashness, lest I disrupt both sides' arrangements. The arrangements of the supreme Yang Dao lineage in recent days, the overt and covert benefits they have given me, likely serve largely to ensure I follow their plan and stir no trouble, sparing everyone embarrassment and preserving Jiangnan's strength. From the moment he had attained the Purple Mansion realm, Li Ziming had experienced too much. He was no longer the same person he was before. He raised a hand slightly and said softly, I must make arrangements within my family. I will depart at dawn. Ningguang trusted him somewhat, so she nodded as she watched him leave. She turned to gaze toward Jiangbei and murmured, he broke through to the Foundation establishment realm calmly and without strain. It will be difficult to claim a share of the secret treasury of the Miffin lineage. Better to see whether there are any promising seedlings instead. The lake surface shimmered brilliantly. At first glance, one took in the purple-golden profound pillar, radiating solemn majesty. Farther off, a golden-red beam pierced the heavens from the viewing pavilion, casting a golden reflection across the water. Li Ziming pondered quietly as he descended on a streak of light, passing through his family's Zheguang profound purple spirit formation. Beneath the tallest profound pillar, veiled in hazy purple radiance, lay the inner formation. The inner formation had once contained buildings, but were now reduced to ruins. Li Ziming had been pressed for time when he had established the formation and had never stepped inside. In recent days, he had been preoccupied with the matter of the spirit embryo. After finally settling that, he had then hurried to Zonquan Island to meet Li Xiaowei. It was only now that he had the leisure to enter. As he passed through the hazy purple light, he saw a pale yellow surface smooth as glazed glass, etched with faint purple patterns. They were clearly formed by the transformation of the formation's mana. A brief glance revealed a perfectly round expanse, little more than 500 meters across. The spiritual energy is quite good. The island's spiritual energy has been steadily rising with no sign of stopping since the grand formation was established. It has already reached the level of Zhaijing Mountain within the inner formation. It is sufficient even for Purple Mansion realm cultivation. This area was not small, but the Li family's palatial structures had never been grand. The former main hall for governance had been only a little over 100 meters. There was ample space within the inner formation to erect many buildings. However, at the moment, the ground was level and empty. The ruins had clearly been cleared away. One saw only the yellow glass-like surface and the purple haze of the formation dome. Several cultivators at the Qi cultivation realm were constructing halls and pavilions. Li Ziming glanced around and spotted Li Jiangqian standing with hands behind his back. Seeing Li Ziming, Jiangqian first showed delight, then a trace of worry and bowed. "Greetings, Taoist Master, the North." Li Ziming and the other Taoist masters had been high in the sky and could perceive events in the north through divine ability alone. The family clearly knew nothing of the battle just fought. There. Li Ziming first scanned the great void with the immortal mirror. Finding no one spying from the great void, he said solemnly, "Jiangqian should have made the arrangements. None of our direct lineage on the northern shore needs to go. Let him take her as he pleases. As for the River Mountain Sutra, it was only mentioned in passing. If it comes to fruition, so be it. The Lord has reached the Foundation establishment realm and will arrive soon. Send people at once to prepare." Chapter 1368, Mifen's Spirit Sword I. That Lord has already reached the Foundation establishment realm. His influence is no longer what it once was. Let Chen Yang go without concern. Li Ziming said no more. Li Jiangqian's expression turned solemn, and he bowed in salute. "This junior understands." Li Ziming watched him nod and said softly, "I still need to make a trip to the southern border. Qiu will oversee matters at home for the moment, but I am placing them in your hands first. Remember one thing, the direct lineage of my family must never be touched." Even though Li Jiangqian was cautious by nature, Li Ziming still reminded him. He flicked a jade slip from his sleeve, placed it in Li Jiangqian's hand, and waved him off, saying, "Retrieve these spirit items at once. There is also a stalk of drum profound treasure flower and a golden obedient flame fruit at home. Take them all out and have Minggong deliver them here." Li Jiangqian immediately withdrew. Before long, Li Minggong arrived within the formation, bowed deeply, and said respectfully, "Greetings, Taoist Master." Li Ziming helped her to her feet and said quietly, "These past years have been hard on you. You rose with the family from its humblest days and have always been diligent. In those early years, we had nothing of worth and you were shortchanged in cultivation methods. I obtained a Purple Mansion Realm spirit pill from the Eastern Sea. It can refine and purify the Tao Foundation. It suits you perfectly." Li Minggong was first startled and overjoyed upon hearing it was a Purple Mansion Realm spirit pill. Soon after, she frowned slightly, bowed again, and said gently, "It troubles the Taoist master to remember me. This junior is deeply grateful, but my aptitude is dull. Beyond Foundation establishment realm lies a dead end for me. I am already advanced in age. Even with a higher Tao Foundation, it would amount to little more than waste. I only hope the Taoist master will grant it to Jiangqian or Qiuan. That would be putting it to proper use." Li Ziming shook his head and replied, "Their contributions do not compare to yours, so they should not receive this great pill. That is the first reason. Second, the cultivation methods they practice are of extremely high grade. If it were not for my Purple Mansion realm making us an immortal family, they would not even dare reveal them before others. The efficacy of this spirit pill is quite limited. It would not have much effect on the two of them, whereas it suits your immortal foundation." At her side, Li Jiangqian had already presented the jade box. Li Ziming then took out another freshly copied jade slip, placed it in her hand, and instructed her, "Follow the cultivation method recorded in this jade slip to achieve the best effect. All the necessary spirit materials have been prepared. As for the treasured panacea for true fire, the family has prepared one for you and taken an extra as a precaution. Make full use of them." Li Minggong could only accept it with thanks. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she replied, "It is a pity for my younger brother Cheng Hui. He would have been the most suitable." Li Ziming silently patted Li Minggong on the shoulder. He nodded to Li Jianqian and then transformed into heavenly light, streaking away. He flickered briefly above the island before pausing and descending onto the roof of a residence. After the Li direct lineage had moved to the island, their lives improved markedly. Li Chengzhai had spent the latter half of his life living in proper estates. The older he became, the more respect he commanded. Even while the island bustled with activity, this residence had long since been completed for him. Large red lanterns hung before the gate, flickering faintly. Li Ziming adjusted his sleeves and then raised his hand to knock. "Great." The door opened quickly, revealing an old man holding a lantern. He had no cultivation. After a glance, he said in a daze, You are the old master." Li Ziming did not answer. The faint heavenly light flickering between his eyebrows said everything. Even if the servants had never seen him in person, who around the lake did not know of his majestic bearing as he rode colored clouds and commanded heavenly light. Clang! The lantern crashed to the ground and rolled several times. Pale yellow oil and flickering flames spread swiftly. The steward cried out, dropped to his knees, braced himself with knee hand, and began knocking his head frantically against the floor. The quiet of the residence was shattered at once. A woman with refined eyes and graceful brows hurried down the steps. She wore a red skirt adorned with white blossoms and called out in confusion, "Uncle Du, what happened?" Li Ziming said softly, "Xiaoyu." The sound sent a chill racing down Zia Xiaoyu's spine. Even after returning from the outer sea so many years ago, she still regarded the voice that had changed her fate with a single sentence with both fear and reverence. "Taoist master." She hurried forward, but the Taoist master in white and gold passed through the front courtyard like a streak of light and landed before her. "Take me to see Chengzhai." She lowered her head at once and led him in. The inner room past the central hall was brightly lit. Faint sighs could be heard within, and a young man in red knelt quietly on the floor. Li Ziming gently waved a hand, stopping Zia Xiaoyu at his side. As he gazed at the portrait of the Taoist master hanging high in the central hall, he stood in silence, just as he had on that deep night many years ago. Li Chengzhai was already very frail. Ordinary mortals lived only 60 or 70 years. Only those at the embryonic breathing realm reached 120. Sun Bai had examined him, and several cultivators had lent assistance. For now, his condition remained stable. The Taoist master soars high across the heavens. "What are you praying for? The old master has spoken to me several times. Cultivate well. Reach foundation establishment realm first. That speaks louder than anything. You are the direct grandson of the Purple Mansion realm. Once you achieve the foundation establishment realm, you will stand at the very top." Li Chengzhai coughed twice. Li Ziming's voice, however, was firm and no longer carried the grievance he once had on Mount Qingdu. "The old elder means well for me, but I know my own limits. My hope of reaching foundation establishment realm is slim. If not for the old elder giving me things from time to time, I would likely be stuck in the late Qi cultivation realm like my elder brother. Father does not have many years left. If I enter seclusion now, I might not even see him in his final days. I may even force him to see me off. There is no reason for me to go into seclusion." You do not have the heart for cultivation." Li Ziming lowered his gaze and finally pushed the door open. The room fell into chaos. Li Ziming was first startled, then overjoyed. The old man on the sickbed struggled to sit up and bow. Li Ziming lightly flicked his sleeve, sending Li Ziming and Zia Xiaoyu out of the room. He took a seat beside the bed as if releasing a breath and looked at Li Chengzhai. His eldest son stared at Li Ziming blankly. "Father." The two remained silent for a long time before the Taoist master said softly, "Long ago, I once thought that if I had a son, it would be best if he excelled in artifact refinement. If not that, then formation arts would suffice. That would have been very important for the family. But you turned out to be a mortal. All I could grant you was a lifetime of peace." Li Chengzhai was so startled by his arrival that he found himself without words. He stared blankly at the heavenly light flickering between his father's eyebrows. Only after a long while did he say, "Thank you, Taoist master. With a child like Ziming, I can die without regret." The lamplight in the room flickered. Father and son had been brought together by a grandson's wishful insistence, yet they sat like strangers. There were no tears and no sighs. After waiting for 15 minutes, the Taoist master pushed the door open and stepped out. The central hall was dark and heavy with shadows. As the door opened, it faced the portrait hanging within. Li Ziming knelt before the room, his forehead pressed to the ground, waiting in silence. Li Ziming stood quietly upon the steps. His gaze passed over the couple and settled within the hall. The portrait of the Taoist master swayed faintly in the breeze. The The tiny point of heavenly light, dotted in gold paint, glimmered faintly in the darkness. The Taoist master in the painting stood lofty and aloof, his eyes indifferent, as if unchanged through the years. It stirred within Taoist master Zhejiang a sudden sense of familiarity, one that pressed him into silence. Li Zhuming waited and waited for an unknown span of time. Then he finally glimpsed a corner of white robes passing before him out of the corner of his eye. A voice followed with an instruction: "Go cultivate in peace." Li Zhuming raised his head. The Taoist master had already departed in a transformation of light. He knocked his head several more times, then hurried inside to look toward the couch. His father lay there with his head tilted to one side, as though asleep. Hurried footsteps and the clatter of weapons, loud and chaotic, echoed outside the courtyard, along with a shout. By order of the family head, the grand formation will be adjusted today. The 4 direct lineages, major sects and minor sects alike, are to remain within their courtyards and must not step outside. Chapter 1369, Miffin's Spirit Sword II. Great River. The night had deepened, bringing a slight chill to the air. The river surged endlessly, beautiful beneath the clear moonlight. Several streaks of light flew in from Jiangbei and came to land one by one along the riverbank. The man in the front cut an imposing figure. He wore armor of white and red, with a pale crimson cloak draped behind him. A sword hung at his waist, giving him an air of dominance and striking charisma. This man was none other than Lin Feng. Unlike during the great battle on the riverbank, he now had an entirely new set of equipment. It was clear he had made another substantial gain and replaced much of his gear. His cloak shimmered brightly, and his former Dharma sword had been replaced by a slender, fiery red blade. 2 women stood on either side. A step behind them were 2 Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators as escorts, one an old man in gray robes and the other a youth in black. Their cultivation did not appear especially high. He spoke calmly: "Seeing us here is enough." The woman in white at his side said in a slightly aggrieved tone, "What an extraordinary beauty she must be, to have you personally cross the river to fetch her." Though already at mid-stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm, Song Yunbai of the capital Immortal Dao only dared to complain gently before him. Suddenly, the pretty girl in a blue skirt beside them snapped and said, "Brother Lin is here to fetch my sister. What does that have to do with you? You sure know how to talk." The pretty girl was Fei Qingfei. Though merely a mortal, she dared to scold someone at the Foundation Establishment Realm. It was quite humiliating, but Song Yunbai could only lower her head and swallow the grievance. Lin Feng waved his hand. "That is enough." Song Yunbai departed reluctantly, yet Fei Qingfei continued grumbling. "Honestly, one after another. We finally got rid of Wang Xiaoxiao, and now another surnamed Song appears. There are so many women in this world, all coveting someone from my family." Lin Feng chuckled, not taking her complaints too seriously, and ordered, "Wu Gui, you have visited the Moongei's immortal family before. Go ahead and lead the way to the Fei family on the northern bank."
"Yes."
The 4 of them sped along, and soon arrived near the area around Glacial Cloud Peak. Wu Gui had previously gone only to the island, and was not very familiar with the northern bank, so he slowed his pace. An old man happened to be strolling on the wind nearby. When he saw them, he called out in delight, "Feng lad."
"Uncle Kai."
Newcomer was none other than Fei Tongkai, who had once escorted Fei Qingya back to the lake. He now looked much plumper, and his cultivation had advanced considerably. He smiled as he said, "I have been cultivating downstream and searching for a certain spirit material these past few days, but I took the chance to travel upstream during some free time. What a coincidence. You have actually reached the Foundation Establishment Realm. You are here to fetch Qingya, are you not?" Lin Feng nodded. Fei Qingfei moved close in familiarity. Fei Tongkai did not even bother to report their arrival, and led them straight toward the peak. Fortunately, the patrolling cultivators had already received instructions and allowed them to enter. With Fei Tongkai leading the way, they quickly landed on a peak. The courtyard was filled with noise. A woman of cold temperament stood within. Opposite her stood another woman dressed in Fei family attire, smiling mockingly as she said, "So lofty and aloof, yet your cultivation does not rise. They say you entered this peak through connections, but you refuse to believe it. If not for the family head's breakthrough, would a nobody from Jiangbei like you be allowed to return to cultivate here? Instead of gratitude, you claim your lover is coming to take you away." Someone nearby immediately tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Stop talking." "Why can I not speak? She eats the family's food and uses the family's resources. We finally raised her to the Qi cultivation realm, and now she says she will go north with her lover. She can do it but cannot hear it spoken." Fei Qingya said softly, "When I go north, I will repay these things one by one. It has nothing to do with you." "Nothing to do with me, this." Lin Feng could no longer endure it. He let out a cold laugh, kicked the gate open, and surged in with roaring flames. The blaze instantly suppressed all other voices as he shouted, "Wretched woman." Fei Qingya's eyes lit up and she rushed forward. "Brother Lin." Lin Feng wrapped an arm around her. ND said coldly, "A dignified Fei family has such a vile woman as you." He struck out with a palm, flames surging. Lin Feng was a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator. How could someone at the Qi cultivation realm withstand such a blow? The woman spat blood and collapsed with a cry. The courtyard erupted in alarm. Wu Gui broke out in a cold sweat and glanced at the black-robed Taoist beside him as he thought, "This is Moongaze Lake." The Fei family might not amount to much, but the Li family stood behind them. When beating a dog, one must consider its master. Moongaze Lake was no band of Jiangbei underlings. Fortunately, though furious, Lin Feng still retained some restraint. The woman collapsed to the ground, coughing blood and writhing in pain, but she was not dead. Fei Qingya was also shocked. The two Dharma protectors had no time to assist before a loud announcement rang out. "Dharma Protector Chen arrives." "This is bad, we have been caught in the act." Wu Gui's heart jolted in fear, yet Lin Feng instead grew calm. He looked at the black-robed youth descending from the sky and said with a smile, "Dharma Protector Chen, long time no see." Chen Yang descended with hearty laughter. His face showed satisfaction and delight as he said, "Excellent, fellow Taoist, you truly have reached the Foundation Establishment realm." He landed and only then noticed the woman on the ground. He asked in confusion, "This is?" Wu Gui hurried forward and said with a sigh, "My master only just arrived and happened to catch her hurling insults." As a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator, he could hardly allow such defiance, so he took action to discipline her a little. Chen Yang shook his head and lifted the unconscious woman. As he used mana to protect her heart meridians, preventing the burning dry fire from gradually draining her life force, he replied with a sigh, "How could ordinary people recognize Qingya as a piece of uncut jade? Verbal disputes are common enough. She simply should not have directed it at you." Lin Feng nodded slightly. He glanced at Fei Qingya, frowned, and said softly, "This, the technique Qingya cultivates is." Clearly the River One Qi technique was nothing but trash in Lin Feng's eyes. It offended his sight. Chen Yang laughed heartily and replied, "This is my family's inherited technique, specially found for Qingya. It shares the same Qi as my Foundation Establishment realm technique. If there is an opportunity, she could make use of my technique as well. With Qingya's innate ability, she will likely not be limited to the Foundation Establishment realm."
"Oh."
Lin Feng glanced at Chen Yang. A faint red light flickered in his eyes, clearly the activation of some perception technique. He nodded thoughtfully and said with a trace of surprise, "If she can connect with your esteemed family's Purple Mansion realm technique, it will save me the trouble of searching elsewhere. I need only exchange for a portion from your family." Chen Yang let out a long sigh and shook his head. If that were possible, it would be ideal. Unfortunately, the method to unlock our Purple Mansion realm technique was lost many years ago. It is said that only a cultivator of sufficient talent and profound fortune, meeting the criteria set by our forebears, can open it. Thus this technique has remained untouched all these years, and simply remained in our possession. It was difficult enough to bring it out for Qingya now. "So that is the case." Lin Feng laughed aloud and raised a brow. "Very well, there is no need to trouble your family over this technique. I have my own means." Fei Qingya glanced lightly at Chen Yang. Her hand tightened slightly around her man's arm as she said gently, "Since we are already here, why not bring out the technique and have a look? If it can be opened, it will spare us the trouble of searching later. It would be a good thing." Lin Feng smiled and covered her hand with his own. He said, "In that case, Dharma Protector Chen, please bring it for us to examine. It will add a bit of interest." Chen Yang had thought there would be no chance, yet no wind was stronger than pillow wind. His recent efforts in assisting Fei Qingya had indeed borne fruit, prompting her to ask at this moment. He quickly dispatched someone to fetch it. Lin Feng turned and said warmly to Fei Qingya, "These years have been hard on you. From now on, at my side, you will lack neither provisions nor Dharma artifacts. If you desire anything, I will fetch it from Miffin for you." Fei Qingfei piped up indignantly, "That is right, sister. I cannot cultivate, so I cannot take any of those things from Miffin. They only end up benefiting those others. You should take more for yourself so it does not go to waste on them." How could Fei Qingya fail to understand? She immediately asked suspiciously, "Them?" Jealousy flared in Fei Qingfei as she replied, "Is it not so, Song Yunbai of the Song Fami? Lai and Wang Xiaoxiao from the Ridge, both are close with brother Lin now." Fei Qingya's expression darkened at once as she turned away in displeasure. Chen Yang paid it no mind and waited for the jade slip to arrive. When it was brought forward, Lin Feng, somewhat embarrassed, seized the chance to change the topic and nodded. "Zhao Yuan, you cultivate water virtue. Your innate ability is not weak, and your fortune is not shallow. It is fitting that you examine this item. The black-robed youth seemed taciturn and aloof, but he stepped forward and accepted the jade slip. He examined it for a while and replied, "It is flawless, like a dead object. However, the Qian Qingye and Senior Chen seems familiar. I believe I have seen it in the east. Su Yan of the capital Immortal Dao also cultivates this Dao. It is called Jing Dragon King." Chen Yang nodded repeatedly and said, "Precisely." Before Zhao Yuan could say any more, Lin Feng said thoughtfully, "He turned the capital Immortal Dao upside down. He can be considered a top-tier figure. If Senior's technique truly selects its own inheritor, it would be worth letting him try. The only difficulty is finding him." He quickly shook his head with a smile and continued, "Leaving that aside, I must thank Senior Chen Yang for taking care of Qingye all these years. Otherwise, who knows how much grievance she would have endured in a place like the Fei family." Lin Feng casually took a long case from his storage pouch and opened it lightly. Inside lay a pitch-black Foundation Establishment Realm Dharma sword. The sword appeared plain and black along its length, without a single pattern. Its straight form was simple from top to bottom, yet it gave off remarkable vitality. It was clearly no ordinary item. The moment it was revealed, a surge of sword chi shot skyward. Its quality was by no means low among Foundation Establishment Realm weapons. It already possessed a degree of spirituality. However, more precious still was the aura of pit water that encircled it. It had clearly been chosen with care. "This is a fine sword I obtained. I acquired 4 at the time: Black Stream, Falling Laurel, Sea Sundering, and Piercing Heart. They correspond to pit water, greater yin, converging water, and radiant fire respectively. All came from the Miffin Dao lineage." He appeared indifferent, as though these items were not particularly precious to him. He gestured at the red Dharma sword at his waist and smiled. "I carry Piercing Heart myself and plan to give it to Yunbai. Falling Laurel went to Senior Bai Yinzi. Sea Sundering was given to fellow Taoist Han Li. Black Creek I specially reserved for Senior." Dharma swords were coveted by all, and a spiritual treasure like Black Creek was far beyond ordinary weapons. Yet in his mouth, they sounded like roadside cabbages, handed out one after another. The Li family had produced sword cultivators for generations, accumulating blades over time, yet their collection might not equal what Lin Feng had casually displayed in a moment. Leaving aside the others, Chen Yang himself cultivated the sword. This sword matched his immortal foundation almost perfectly. Faced with such temptation, he could not take his eyes off it. Fei Qingfei muttered at the side, somewhat spoiling the atmosphere. "The swords from that Dao lineage all look the same. There is nothing impressive about them." Fortunately, Chen Yang kept his thoughts in check. Otherwise, he might have cursed aloud. He stared at the sword with fascination and said with a sigh, "This is far too valuable. How could I let you spend so lavishly? I cannot accept it." Lin Feng laughed heartily and shook his head. Fei Qingfei said proudly, "This is nothing precious. Brother Lin has a Zheng metal sword form spirit embryo that has already gained spirituality. That is truly valuable. It even has to be sealed with a special Dharma artifact to prevent it from revealing itself in the Great Void and attracting the attention of certain Purple Mansion realm cultivators or being drawn away by metallic essence. Other than that spirit embryo, the rest are nothing special. They may be good for Senior, but for Brother Lin, they are already outdated." Fei Qingfei was a mortal and unfamiliar with cultivation. Her words lacked restraint. Though spoken with pride, they caused Fei Qingye to frown inwardly. "My sister has truly been spoiled by him. She says everything openly." Lin Feng did not mind. He stood with his hands behind his back and looked at Fei Qingye, speaking softly in reassurance. "Do not worry. The true profound command token is in my possession. They will not stoop to bullying the weak to seize this spirit embryo from me." "Spirit embryo?" Chen Yang was utterly astonished. Lin Feng smiled modestly as he said, "It was only good fortune. Miffin is not a Dao lineage famed for the sword. Though Mount Zioshi once held great renown, its chief wealth came from the Wanglin Upper Sect. I searched through the entire Miffin Dao lineage and found only this one sword-form spirit embryo. There were no more powerful spirit swords, just this one." Chapter 1370, Meticulous Preparations, I. Since Lin Feng had already offered it, Chen Yang truly did not dare refuse. He let out a long sigh and said, "Such a precious item. It surpasses the sum of my entire life's wealth. I merely lent you a small hand back then, yet I have received such a return. A hero truly emerges in youth. I cannot help but admire you." Fei Qingfei clearly enjoyed the flattery and nodded in satisfaction. Lin Feng, however, waved his hand, plainly unwilling to linger, and said casually, "I am entangled in many affairs and cannot stay long. Since Qingye has been received, I shall return north. I must also help her make up for the cultivation she has fallen behind on these past years, so I will not trouble you further. As for uncles Tongkai and Tonglu, they may also come along for a visit. After all, King Fei has not seen them for many years and misses them dearly. The Fei brothers had known Lin Feng since he was merely at the embryonic breathing realm. Fei Tonglu was also the father of the Fei sisters, so Lin Feng naturally regarded him highly. Chen Yang could hardly wait for them to leave and quickly said, "No matter, no matter. The two of you are not particularly valued within the Fei family anyway. Go ahead and visit your relatives. I will report to the lake later and assign a couple of tasks for you as cover." The Fei family had declined in talent. Fei Tongkai had once been a core figure of the family, but after a trip north, the one living within his body was no longer himself. He had been assigned to the riverbank and gradually faded from public view. It was precisely because of this that the two Fei family members were happy to head north and nodded repeatedly. Chen Yang had opened every possible door for them, and Lin Feng's group was greatly satisfied. Fei Qingfei, whose mouth had not stopped for a moment, finally had nothing unpleasant to say. She cupped her hands in farewell and was pulled into the air by Lin Feng. They rose upon the wind and sped north, soon vanishing beyond the horizon. Chen Yang remained where he stood, holding the long jade box in both hands. Before he could react, the scent of pine spread through the air. The white-robed Taoist master manifested atop the peak. Ning Wan, a sword cradled in her arms, stepped quietly into the courtyard, startling Chen Yang into immediately dropping to his knees as he said respectfully, "I pay my respects to the Taoist master." The Fei family woman huddled in the corner of the courtyard, and the bewildered Fei family members also bowed. Chen Yang hurriedly raised the long box in his hands and called out, "I ask the Taoist master to take a look." Ningguan nodded slightly and picked up Black Stream. She carefully examined it from the tip of the blade to the hilt and found nothing unusual. She let out a soft sigh. It is indeed of the Miffin Dao lineage, bearing the aura of the Wanglin upper sect from the near-ancient era. After only a few breaths, several streaks of light raced through the air and landed on the mountain one after another. Li Jianqian and Fei Qingyi of the Fei family both bowed in salute and said respectfully, "We pay our respects to the Taoist master." Ningguan let out a breath and appeared much more at ease as she said, "Congratulations. It brings benefit without harm. Zhejiang has gone to the southern border." Although Ningguan was clearly asking a question she already knew the answer to, it was still courtesy. Li Jianqian replied, "Under the Taoist master's boundless blessing, our family's ancestor has already departed for the southern border. Before leaving, he instructed that all matters along the riverbank are to follow the Taoist master's decree." Ningguan nodded and said softly, "Your Taoist master is absent, but fortunately Fei Qingyi's future has already been settled. With the Lord's support, she should be nearing the Foundation establishment realm by the time she returns. The great Ziyuqi temple will personally come to take her, so there will be no need to trouble your esteemed family. I understand your esteemed family is a lineage of sword immortals. Those few people and their few swords, some portion must be allotted to your family." Li Jianqian merely nodded in agreement. Ningguan sighed again. "Piercing Heart Songyun by Cheng Yun has some merit. It would not be appropriate to seize his Dharma sword. Bai Yinzi is incompetent, and who knows how many days he has left. Falling Laurel will be easier to take. See Sundering is in Han Li's hands, but that one keeps his movements well concealed." She seemed lost in thought, reflecting on her lord's earlier words as she murmured, "He has already searched through the entire Dao lineage." When he heard her mutter to herself, Li Jianqian instantly harbored the same suspicion. Taoist master Cheng Yun had specifically mentioned this Dao lineage back when he had met Li Ziming. The surrounding Taoist masters did not just covet Miffin for a few Dharma artifacts. It was clear that this Dao lineage contained ancient spirit artifacts. If the Miffin Dao lineage indeed possessed ancient spirit artifacts, then Lin Feng's trump card was far more than merely a Zheng metal spirit embryo. He must possess one or even several spirit artifacts or ancient spirit artifacts. Ningguan's thoughts did not differ much from his, but standing at a higher vantage, she foresaw more of the coming situation. With the northern stage disrupted like this, and only the Lord able to enter and exit the Miffin secret realm, he has long since profited immensely. There is no chance of anything falling into others' hands without reason. The Lord has stayed in Jiangbei long enough. Once he cultivates a little more and steps into the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm, he can head north to seek an opportunity for breakthrough. He can even break through under the encirclement of numerous Buddhist cultivators. But once he leaves, he will surely divide treasures among those brothers and lovers. This will not be as simple as seizing a person. Ancient spirit artifacts are out of the question. The Lord will keep those for himself. Yet if there are enough spirit artifacts within the Dao lineage, he will certainly leave one or two behind. When that time comes, there will be another battle. Even the Outer Sea factions may intervene. Ningguan looked troubled. Glancing at the Li family members beside her, she said softly, "The Miffin Dao lineage is precious. When the time comes, there will be another struggle. Choose what you favor in advance, lest you end up drawing water with a bamboo basket and gaining nothing. After speaking, she seemed to sense something. It was clear fighting had broken out again in Jiangbei. With a light wave of her hand, she dispersed into wind and snow. Many thanks for the Taoist master's reminder. How could Li Jianqian fail to grasp her meaning? No matter how glorious the group in Jiangbei appeared, once Lin Feng left, they would all become fish on the chopping block. He waited until the wind and snow completely dispersed before rising. His gaze remained fixed on Black Stream. The Dharma sword was simple and dignified. The guard at the hilt was as wide as the blade itself, immediately drawing his attention. It resembles it, it truly resembles it. He appeared calm as he lifted the pitch-black sword and examined it closely, as though admiring its unique style. He praised it aloud. This is the sword style of Miffin. In the Azure Pond sect, only the Frosty Absolute Sword could truly be called a Purple Mansion Realm spirit sword. However, Jiangnan had many sword cultivators, and the sword Dao differed from other Daos. Many of them referred to swords that had received Dao-attained sword intent and birthed spirituality as spirit swords or immortal swords. Thus, when speaking of the Frosty Absolute Sword, they often added the words Purple Mansion Realm to emphasize its uniqueness. The black stream before him had already birthed spirituality and was extremely precious. Chen Yang relayed the information from beside him. As Li Jianqian listened, he gradually sank into thought. 4 Dharma swords have each fallen into different hands, along with a Zheng metal spirit embryo within the Great Void. I wonder which one it is. Li Jianqian still remembered the gray sword from years ago. He turned Black Stream over. The hilt bore no ornamentation whatsoever. After examining it carefully, a trace of anticipation rose within him. This sword will surely be revealed in battle. If a great war erupts in Jiangbei and the spirit embryo shows itself, the truth will become clear. Before that, I must quickly gather information on the appearance of those Dharma swords. Li Jianqian swept his gaze over the courtyard and instructed, "Bring Buzhai here." Fei Qingyi, who had been listening the entire time and had also heard Ning Wan's words, already fully believed Li Jianqian's earlier explanations. He hurried off at once to summon the man. Soon the old man descended on the wind. Li Jianqian asked quietly, "Any news?" Buzhai bowed and replied, "Family head, that Yeasa Chengmi has been pushing further and further into the territory of Xuanmiao Temple. In the end, the Taoist master of Xuanmiao Temple also disappeared. It is said their marketplace was breached and a great amount of property was lost." Li Jianqian did not consider it a major matter and said calmly, "The Taoist master has already given a warning. These individuals are all favored sons of heaven. Coordinate with Chen Yang, inquire about them by name and have their portraits drawn."
Yes.
Chen Yang bowed. Only then did Li Jianqian add, as if in passing, investigate their garments and Dharma artifacts as thoroughly as possible. Chapter 1371, Meticulous Preparations, II. The grotto heaven was shrouded in a haze. A pale white platform stretched endlessly into the distance as osmanthus trees swayed gently. In the sky, the sun and moon shone together in brilliant radiance. Beyond their twin lights, a translucent glow appeared at the highest point, revealing another realm beyond. The sky was dark and heavy. Vast silhouettes emerged within, faintly casting their presence upon the pale world below and giving rise to layers of luminous brilliance. Lu Jianxian stood within the grotto heaven, gazing into the great void from afar. The radiance of the great void over Jiangbei could be seen clearly from the northern shore. There was no need to think further. More than one true monarch must be observing. Out of an abundance of caution, his true body had not even crossed the riverbank and remained concealed over the lake. No one knows how many methods the Wei Great Ancestor possesses. From the metallic essence within the Sunseeker ring alone, it is clear that this man likely has deep entanglements with me, not to mention the current Li family also bears the surname Li. Now that Lin Feng had crossed Moongaze Lake, the metallic essence within his immortal mirror stirred violently. It had already attempted to break free and fly toward Lin Feng several times. If it were still within the Sunseeker ring, it likely would have leaped forth and returned to him. Fortunately, the immortal mirror possessed an exceedingly high inherent rank. It firmly suppressed the bright yang metallic essence without the slightest tremor, allowing everything to remain stable. As for the Great Void, Ning Wan was not the only one present. He let out a faint sigh as a scene unfolded. In the silent Great Void above Glacial Cloud Peak on the northern shore, a cultivator stood within the Great Void itself. The man wore dark robes with white trim along the straight collar and right lapel. A Taoist crown rested upon his head, and a small gourd hung at his waist. His long beard was jet black. He stood silently in the Great Void, concealed by some profound technique that left Ning Wan completely unaware. His face was long and his cheekbones slightly high. yet his phoenix eyes concealed those flaws, giving him a dignified and upright bearing. Light shimmered within his gaze as he quietly observed Moongaze Lake from the great void. Although his cultivation was hidden by wondrous divine abilities, it could not escape divine sense. He had already reached the very peak of the Purple Mansion realm, with 5 divine abilities perfected. 6 sharp-edged 3-foot flying swords aligned at their hilts, erected like a screen, hovered behind this grand Taoist master. A faint multicolored radiance drifted around them, suppressing a terrifying divine power. Mount Luoxia. Such a grand Taoist master, one who could be said to stand unrivaled across Jiangnan, was merely overseeing the river crossing on behalf of a true monarch. He paid no attention to the Li family members, did not spare Ning Wan an extra glance, and did not even particularly notice Lin Feng. This cultivator of Mount Luoxia was supremely confident, his gaze fixed upon Moongaze Lake the entire time. A trace of melancholy rested on his face. With his hands clasped behind his back, his drifting gaze swept across the gathered cultivators, as though mourning the Moonlight Origin mansion that had once occupied this land. When his gaze returned, Fei Qingfei was chattering endlessly about her brother Lin. The grand Taoist master of Mount Luoxia showed neither disdain nor lofty arrogance. He simply watched in silence. It was only when Lin Feng returned to Jiangbei and re-entered the board that the man turned away without the slightest hesitation. He dispersed into a streak of multicolored light and vanished into the air, clearly having long grown weary of remaining. From beginning to end, this grand Taoist master of Mount Luoxia had never regarded the Jiangnan Tao lineage as worthy of his attention. Mount Luoxia. From that single encounter alone, Lu Jiangxian sensed the disparity between them. The 6 swords behind him are not swords of the Sword Tao, but spellcasting art swords, yet all 6 are ancient spirit artifacts, what the Jiangnan cultivators commonly call spirit treasures. There would be no need for the true monarch to act. As long as he remains in Jiangbei, even if every cultivator of the supreme Yang Dao lineage perished, they likely would not be able to touch Lin Feng unless a Golden Core Realm trump card is used. This is the true majestic light, Mount Luoxia. Since he knew the other party's strength full well, Lu Jiangxian had been waiting for the true monarchs to depart. Several true monarchs stood within the great void over Jiangbei, not far from the lake, though his grotto heave. And hung within the mirror, it was impossible to predict what changes might occur if the Li family cultivators suddenly vanished into it. What mattered even more now was the fragment of the immortal mirror. He had long since observed that a long sword lay concealed on Lin Feng's person. It was slightly longer than the black stream and bore the same slender hilt. Layer upon layer of black cloth Dharma artifacts sealed it, locking it within his qi. A Zheng metal sword-shaped spirit embryo. Currently there were 5 swords. 4 were Foundation Establishment Realm Dharma swords that had been sent out, and the remaining one was the spirit embryo. If Lin Feng spoke truthfully and had indeed searched the entirety of the Miffin Dao lineage, then the fragment must lie within these 5 swords. The Zheng metal sword-shaped spirit embryo was sealed and submerged within the qi, wrapped in overlapping layers of black cloth. Its aura was no longer discernible. Lu Jiangxian feared provoking a reaction, and thus did not probe deeper into the qi. What Lu Jiangxian and all the Li family members could perceive through their connection were merely images without aura. Yet there was one crucial detail: it was the proportions of the blade. Though wrapped in black cloth, the sword's form cannot change much. Judging by its length, this is likely not the one seen before. If that is so, then aside from this sword, it can only be among the remaining Foundation Establishment Realm Dharma swords. This discovery brought a faint surge of joy to Lu Jiangxian's heart. The fragments of the immortal mirror were far from useless. Each had its own function, though exceedingly concealed. Ordinary cultivators and even Golden Core Realm cultivators could not discern their purpose. Even if spiritual sense swept over them, they would appear to be mundane objects. That left far too many possibilities. Lin Feng never mentioned the exact number of Miffin Dharma swords. He only said he obtained 4. The fragment accessory may hang from the tail of one of those 4 swords, or perhaps that sword was never taken out and still remains within the Miffin secret realm. That can be considered good news. After all, the value of a Dharma sword is a tier lower. No matter how difficult it may be, it cannot be more difficult than the one within the true monarch's qi. Lu Jiangxian relaxed slightly, feeling much eased, and muttered, "Let Li Jiangxian investigate first. Once the true monarch departs and the board in Jiangbei is undone, Li Ziming will ride the light and depart." Chapter 1372, Treasured Elephant Eye. Southern Border. Years ago, the Azure Pond sect had been attacked by the Great Konghai Temple. They had lost the 10,000-mile Stone Pond, and along with it, northern Dan Island. Now they had retreated to the coastal region of Jeju, only several dozen kilometers away from northern Dan. This place lay within the southern border, facing northern Dan to the south. It was backed by Hangzhou Dao and the Azure Pond sect, yet because the retreat had been temporary, its defensive forces were rather thin. After all, Jeju was not a crucial pass by any means. Beyond Jeju, Yi Mountain City to the north was the true first fortress guarding the southern border. If the great Konghai Temple seized this place, it would gain nothing and might even provoke Hangzhou Dao Gate into action. Both sides understood this clearly. The Azure Pond sect need not have concerned itself with this land, yet the western stretch of the Stone Pond clung tightly to the southern border's coastline and extended deep inland. Along that narrow strip lay the Shawang Kingdom, known as the land south of Lingnan. The local Taoist master Zhosheng was an ally of the Azure Pond sect and a close associate of the Si family. Once Stone Pond was lost, the entire region lay exposed to the claws of the great Konghai Temple. The supreme Yang Dao lineage had insisted on guarding the southern border for fear that the teeth would grow cold if the lips were gone. Li Ziming rode a streak of heavenly light in from the north. He was followed by a black-robed Yanhu carrying a spear. Landing nearby, he saw that the cultivator guarding Jeju was an old acquaintance, a Mount Yue cultivator named Fei Loya. The old Mount Yue cultivator stepped forward at once and bowed as he said, "Fei Loya pays respects to the Taoist master. Congratulations on unity at the lake. Congratulations to the immortal family." This old fellow had once been a disciple of Mount Wu. He had survived until today and seemed to hold a respectable status. After Dunmu Kui had died, his disciples had scattered. Some had even joined the Azure Pond sect. However, Fei Loya had not immediately submitted but maintained ties with the Li family. The Kai family had never valued these Mount Wu cultivators. They seized their techniques and simply used them as expendable pawns. Fei Loya soon realized the lake was not an ideal place to remain. After much maneuvering, he joined Yi Mountain City. Later, when Kai Ning took charge of the Azure Pond sect, Fei Loya relied on his keen instincts to rise swiftly and earn considerable merit. Now this Mount Yue cultivator had truly made something of himself. Several Azure Pond sect disciples followed him respectfully. Li Ziming nodded with a faint smile as the old man said tearfully, "Seeing the Taoist master is like beholding the radiant sun in the high heavens. I recall my former association with Senior Tangya, lofty as towering mountains. The memory fills me with sorrow." Li Ziming had read his family histories and met this man years ago. He had not been so courteous then. Even the family ancestors had needed to tread carefully around him. Now, after worldly experience, he spoke pleasantly, merely seeking to invoke past ties. Li Ziming waved him off and said, "It is well that you are here. I come on behalf of Taoist Master Qiuhu to guard the southern border. I intend to visit the Shawang Kingdom. Lead the way." Li Ziming had not come to the southern border in vain. Since he was here, he would settle Yanhu's matters and inquire about the great Konghai Temple. Most importantly, he sought the bright Yang spirit artifact in the hands of the southern Shun Raksha king of Songzhou. This information had come through connections within the supreme Yang Dao lineage. Now that he was at the southern border, crossing the Stone Pond would lead to Songzhou. Paying a visit and inquiring about the spirit artifact would make the journey worthwhile. Fei Loya quickly stepped onto heavenly light, and Li Ziming traversed the great void southward. He saw dense forests, sparse farmlands, and long, narrow mountain ranges, quite different from the scenery of Yue State. He glanced below and asked, "What people inhabit this land? They appear to be barbarians." Fei Loya sighed. The Shawang are also barbarians. In ancient times they were called the Jiaji people. They are likely less orthodox than my Mount Yue. It is only because a Taoist master cultivates here that it has taken on some semblance of order. Li Ziming nodded slightly and asked the question he cared about most. This Taoist master Zhosheng, is he a Shawang cultivator? This was no simple question. Though the north and south were fractured, and the celestial dynasty no longer existed, the line between the civilized and the barbarian remained distinct. Even a Mount Yue cultivator at the Foundation establishment realm would be regarded as inferior. If Taoist Master Zhosheng were truly Shawang, then differences in culture and custom would make dealings with him difficult indeed. Fortunately, Fei Loya shook his head repeatedly and said softly, "This Taoist master bears the surname Liu, from a highly renowned family. In those years when the Chu state unified Jiangnan and styled itself the southern court in opposition to the north, it sent armies to pacify Jiaji and advanced as far south as the Champa kingdom. It established the Annan Military Commission with 7 prefectures and 56 cities. The military commissioner at the time was surnamed Liu, honored name. That military commissioner was a Taoist master who had cultivated divine abilities. He fell when Chu perished. Taoist master Zhosheng is his descendant and is originally from Mushroom Forest Plain. Li Ziming nodded at once and sighed inwardly, so he descends from a distinguished lineage. His strength must not be simple, and he keeps a Snow Ridge listening pine marten as well. He cannot be underestimated. However, surnamed Liu and a Chu military commissioner, the imperial surname of Chu was Liu. If one traces it back, his status must not be low. Perhaps his circumstances are not unlike my own family's. In the later years of Chu, the state had descended into chaos. Right and wrong had been reversed to a terrifying extent. The throne rose and fell repeatedly until Zhao of Wu usurped it, and the entire imperial family was overturned, suffering a fate even worse than Wei's Li. In time, Wu state had lost its eastern lands and retreated into Shu. Passing over the Shawang populace below, they soon beheld an immortal mountain. A cultivator in a high cap and broad belt rose upon the wind to greet them respectfully. "Greetings, Taoist Master Zheajing. Our Taoist master has awaited you for some time. Please allow your immortal carriage to rest briefly." Li Ziming descended upon his light. Compared to Nine Mounds and Ziuqui, Taoist Master Zhesheng's immortal mountain was a tier lower. It was ordinary in appearance and even less expansive than Moongaze Lake. As he descended between the peaks, he saw a pavilion below with flames surging skyward. They were evidently in the midst of artifact refinement. A cultivator dressed as a Taoist reclined lazily beneath the pavilion. He appeared youthful and exceedingly ha. In some meditation cushions lay scattered about the pavilion. Upon seeing Li Ziming, the Taoist master rose and said with a smile, "Greetings, fellow Taoist Zheajing." Li Ziming's gaze swept across a small table where several wine jars were placed. A long sword lay flat upon it, appearing entirely ordinary. Early purple mansion realm with 2 divine abilities, a truly carefree character. Taoist Master Zhesheng cultivated the Jade True Tao. He was a direct beneficiary of true monarch Shang Yun's attainment of the Tao. His appearance was ethereal and refined. Though his robes were slightly disordered, he gave off an effortless naturalness.
Plays.
The two sat at the table. Taoist Master Zhesheng poured wine and said, smiling, "You have traveled south on my behalf. I must thank you. It is aid rendered across 1,000 kilometers." Li Ziming replied politely, "The transformation arts of you 2 fellow Taoists are truly profound. To deceive even a Maha face to face, I have gained much insight today." The Taoist Master's voice was clear. Turning his head, he said, "Invite Taoist Master Xianchen of Eastern Ridge." After giving the instruction, he turned and said seriously, "After all, it is the singular nature of Jade True, known as Jade True 6-9 Void Uniting. Among the 3 shamanic Taos, its transformations are the truest, the most enduring and closest to the immortal Tao. Although the true monarch attained the Tao through jade and stone, emulating the ancient immortals and thus guiding Jade True closer to the immortal Tao, its transformations have become even more authentic." He took a sip of wine and said, "Xianchen also cultivates cold essence. Moreover, Ningguan has just broken through and few have seen her. It is easy to conceal. This time you seek me." Li Ziming considered the events before and after. Hearing this, he surmised Ningguan had her own arrangements in sending him. Since Buddhist cultivators had long been at odds with his own, he was willing to act within his means. He smiled. "It is the great Konghai Temple, is it not?" Zhesheng burst into laughter and said casually, "Zheajing is a man of understanding. As for the great Konghai Temple, the real issue is the temple master behind it. He is a 6th life Maha, a grave threat. Now that Byaking has also succeeded, the stone pond has fallen into the hands of others." He picked up the sword from the table, set it beside him, and said softly, "I do not like being coerced. I must be the one to take the initiative." As soon as he finished speaking, wind and snow howled through the air as a youth in white robes descended upon the snow. With a round face and long eyes, he seated himself at the table with a look of keen interest. "Now we are all gathered. This must be Taoist Master Xianchen, whose true form was the Snow Ridge listening pine marten, a demonic creature." Li Ziming cupped his hands slightly in greeting. Taoist Master Zhesheng said in a serious tone, "Maha excels at calculation. Though my divine ability conceals us, we must act decisively and not delay. Since Zheajing has arrived, I will speak plainly. This move by the great Konghai Temple has satisfied few, from the supreme Yang Dao lineage to the various families of the Southern Sea. They merely fear the temple master of the great Konghai Temple. Fellow Taoist Miao of Thunder Island has spoken with me. The Southern Shun Raksha King of Songzhou has also sought me out. The arrow is already on the string. We have been waiting for your arrival as the east wind." Li Ziming had come on Ningguan's behalf and had been expected to lend aid, yet he did not wish to be drawn too deeply into the conflict, nor did he wish to be injured. After a moment's thought, he asked softly, "What are your arrangements?" Taoist Master Zhesheng exchanged a glance with the demonic creature beside him and replied, The Merciful One has many followers. This time Stone Pond may not be reclaimed and will likely be divided among the factions. But severely wounding Baoking is imperative. He believes fellow Taoist Miao and the Azure Pond sect are at odds and cannot unite. He assumes the Southern Shun Raksha King, like the temple master of the great Konghai Temple, cannot move freely. He does not know that the Southern Shun Raksha now has a second Purple Mansion realm, nor does he expect your arrival. You need not fight, simply proceed east of Lufeng and guard the sea, deterring a certain white elephant. Whether the rest succeeds or fails, you need not intervene. Once the jade talisman we provide shatters, you may depart. Li Ziming stroked his beard and nodded, understanding dawning within. These Purple Mansion realm cultivators have arranged matters thoroughly. Kuiki must have planned this long ago. A man as proud as he would not have let go of the matter of Stone Pond. Inviting me here was deliberate. It is more important that I not remain at Moongaze Lake. With the immortal mirror on his person, ambushes were of little concern to him, nor did he fear risks along the way. In truth, he was already inclined to agree. He thought, though aiding Ningguan offers no immediate reward, unsettling the Buddhist cultivators is worthwhile. Moreover, the Southern Shun Raksha holds a spirit artifact. After this matter concludes, an approach would be entirely natural. Thus he nodded and replied with a smile, "It is only my duty to lend aid. However, I also wish to meet the Southern Shun Raksha King and attempt to exchange for the spirit artifact." Unexpectedly, Zhosheng nodded with a smile and said, "Qiuhu has already mentioned it. The Southern Shun Raksha King awaits your visit. After the battle, we may each need to tend to our wounds. You may proceed to the Southern Shun Raksha directly." Li Ziming nodded in satisfaction. Their interests aligned, so there was no need for further pretenses. He accepted the jade slip and talismans from the other party and was about to ride off upon light when the Taoist master said, "Fellow Taoist, wait a moment." He took a small box from his sleeve, drew out a wisp of Li Ziming's divine ability, formed a hand seal, and gathered the spiritual energy before saying, "This is a minor divine mystic from a spirit artifact of the supreme shaman lineage. It can conceal your cultivation. It is no longer especially effective in this age, but deceiving a foolish demon who relies only on a spell divine ability will suffice. As long as you do not unleash your divine ability, it will last for 3 days." Li Ziming nodded in understanding and departed on the wind. The man and demonic creature stayed among the mountains. Slinging his sword on his back, the Taoist master asked, "It seems Zheajing has support behind him. Chengxia would not dare act against him." The Snow Ridge listening pine marten shook its head and replied, "One cannot be certain. The Li family is drawing ever closer to the supreme Yang Dao lineage. It is possible he has already conferred with Hengzhu Dao Gate, and a group of Taoist masters lie in ambush within the Great Void, waiting for Chengxiao to appear." "That is reasonable." The sword cultivator rose into the clouds and said, "That demon likely will not act. Even if battle erupts, Zheajing's heaven-venerating gate would more than suffice to hold him. Let the other factions make their move." Chapter 1373, Treasured Elephant II. Great Void. Li Ziming left Shawang and flew through the Great Void to northern Dan. He saw brilliant colored radiance sheltering the land below. It was clearly the traditional display of Buddhist cultivators. The sky was filled with a multicolored light whose power was difficult to judge. The great Konghai Temple's mountain gate likely had formations, yet given the Buddhist cultivators' level of formation mastery, northern Dan could not have established one so swiftly. It was most likely sustained by the light of sacred soil. He frowned inwardly, impressive indeed. Buddhist cultivators excel at using the Merciful One as a formation. Drawing it down provides a fine means of protection. It is less troublesome than forging a Purple Mansion realm grand formation. The difficulty lies in that when the people disperse, the formation disperses as well. Yet this was not his concern. He took a detour and flew to Lufeng. Following the jade slip, he halted at the edge of the CC. He peered through the Great Void and saw a small island where demonic creatures moved about, along with the occasional monk. There was only a Foundation Establishment Realm grand formation on the island. The demon elephant was nowhere to be seen, and there was not even the glow of a Purple Mansion realm formation in the Great Void. Clearly, this demonic creature was impoverished. He invoked the immortal mirror to probe the depths and confirmed there was no ambush in the Great Void. Only then did he relax. Glancing below, he drifted down, emerging from the Great Void and manifesting upon the island. Immediate commotion arose. Li Ziming did not hesitate. With a thought, he activated the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger. The sky turned hazy yellow, colored clouds drifting before being scattered by transformed baleful chi. The demonic creatures trembled in fear. Waves surged upon the sea as thunderous roars echoed. White spray exploded from the surface as a burly man clad in white armor strode out of the sea. Suspicion filled his expression. Upon seeing Li Ziming, he paused in surprise and frowned as he said, "Which fellow Taoist stands before me?" Holding the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger, its white pearl shining brightly, Li Ziming swept his gaze over the man and replied with a laugh, merely a rogue cultivator from the outer sea, passing by this place and wishing to meet you. A rogue cultivator, the demonic creature immediately grew suspicious and looked him up and down, unable to discern. In his cultivation, since Li Ziming was a Taoist master, the demonic creature maintained courtesy and waved his sleeve as he said, "Then, please enter." This demon king was impoverished despite being at the Purple Mansion realm. When he saw Li Ziming casually handling a spirit artifact, his momentum weakened noticeably. Leading him onto the island, the demonic creature probed, "Fellow Taoist, do you cultivate the earth virtue?" Li Ziming did not reveal any deeper wonders. He was using the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger, which naturally appeared to be of the earth virtue Tao. While signaling westward with a jade talisman, he replied calmly, "Being in the eastern sea, earth virtue must be a rare sight here." The white elephant frowned deeply, lost in thought. He led Li Ziming up the peak, gathered the scriptures from the table, poured tea, and said softly, "I wonder." Before he could finish, Li Ziming glanced at him and assumed an imposing posture, striking first, "Under whose command does fellow Taoist serve?" The white elephant was still a Purple Mansion realm demon king. He would not be easily intimidated. His expression darkened and his eyes narrowed as he replied, "I cultivate within the sea and am a close friend of the temple master of the great Konghai Temple. I am known as Chuodu, and you, who are you?" Since earth virtue had been mentioned, Li Ziming replied casually, "Are you familiar with the Su Xiang Dao lineage?" Demon King Chuodu stared at him heavily and asked, "Senior Sumian?" Li Ziming had not expected a few words to lead straight to Xuanmiao Temple, since he bore no enmity toward them. Exposing himself in battle and offending Sumian without cause would be foolish. He laughed and shook his head as he said, "No." Yet suspicion rose within him. Sumian is widely connected and quite renowned, unlike me, merely a Purple Mansion realm Taoist master. Even if this demonic creature has not seen him, he should not mistake me for him. Upon hearing his denial, suspicion flashed in the white elephant's eyes. At that moment, a streak of colored light rose into the sky. Chuodu was startled and prepared to rise, yet the man before him reacted even faster, standing with hands behind his back and staring coldly. "Fellow Taoist, please wait." In that moment, Demon King Chuodu finally understood. Li Ziming did not hesitate and said coldly, "I do not wish to harm anyone. If you remain still, we shall part in peace. If you insist on acting, Demon King, you may try." The western light shimmered in many colors. Shock and fury crossed Chuodu's face. After a brief hesitation, his mouth tore wide to his ears, two tusks elongating rapidly as his body expanded in fury. "You dare to harm my friend Baoking, how dare you?" His roar rolled like thunder through the clouds. Below, monks and demons alike looked up, their faces showing fear and shared indignation. Boom! The sea surged violently as a colossal white-skinned treasure elephant rose into the sky, vast as a mountain. A golden mantle was draped over its forehead. Its two ivory tusks were like peaks of white jade, gleaming bright. Its massive mouth was filled with crimson, releasing an ear-splitting roar. Gales erupted in all directions, yet Li Ziming remained standing beside the table, the tea upon it utterly undisturbed. He shook his head and said with a sigh, "How unwise you are, fellow Taoist." As he spoke, a pair of elephantine hooves, vast enough to blot out the sky, descended from above. Their shadows swallowed the entire mountain peak as they stomped down. Facing hooves as large as mountains, Li Ziming revealed a strange expression. He neither invoked a divine ability nor deployed the mountain-charging profound veil. Instead, he merely stepped lightly forward into the great void. The hooves showed no restraint and crashed heavily onto the peak. Thick smoke and thunderous explosions engulfed the island. Demonic creatures and monks alike fell like rain, severed limbs scattering in every direction. Standing quietly within the great void, Li Ziming stared in astonishment, momentarily at a loss for words. I have not even made a move, and he has already destroyed his own domain. Chuodu seemed still unsatisfied. He stomped several more times in fury, flames of wrath surging skyward as he roared, "Where do you think you can flee?" After smashing his own territory, the Demon King reverted to human form, hoisted an enormous stone pillar, and stepped into the great void, leaving behind a land filled with whales. Not good, alarm flashed through Li Ziming's mind. He intends to rush west to provide aid. He no longer held back. Bright Yang divine ability rose within him as he prepared to intercept. Yet the demonic creature ignored him entirely and plunged headlong into the depths of the sea. Li Ziming immediately understood. The radiance in his hand dimmed as he regarded the demonic creature with a peculiar gaze. His demon truly does not wish to fight. Those who reached the Purple Mansion realm were seldom foolish. Thus Li Ziming dared not relax his guard. He followed closely, beams of heavenly light shooting from the center of his brows, forcing the demon to dodge repeatedly and accelerate ever faster. After roughly 15 minutes, they reached the deep-sea region of the Great Void, within the territory of the Dragon Clan. Li Ziming grew cautious. The demon halted abruptly and turned around. Fellow Taoist. Li Ziming had never intended a fight to the death. Smiling gently, he replied, "Fellow Taoist Chuadu has truly broadened my horizons." Demon King Chuadu waved his hands repeatedly. His earlier ferocity vanished, revealing an elephant's simple sincerity. He sighed and said, "My thanks for your understanding." With a wave of his hand, he led Li Ziming back into the manifest world. He set out a table and chairs upon a sea reef, wearing a refreshed and genial expression as he smiled. "So you cultivate bright yang. You must be fellow Taoist Jiajing. You wield a fine spirit artifact indeed. I could not discern a trace of it. My apologies for the offense." Li Ziming was about to speak, yet Chuadu waved his hand first and said, "Byaking deserves it. Let him suffer his misfortune. Even the temple master has left him to reap what he has sown. If I can hold back one Purple Mansion realm force, I have already done my utmost for the great Konghai Temple." He seemed entirely different from before, with a plain and straightforward demeanor. Li Ziming remained noncommittal and believed none of it. What good demon kings ruled the sea? He simply did not wish for mutual ruin and was playing along. After all, the other party likely believed Li Ziming possessed at least 2 spirit artifacts and was perhaps backed by the supreme Yang Dao lineage. Otherwise, how could a Purple Mansion realm demon king who ruled a region display such civility? The demon sighed repeatedly. Li Ziming was content to sit leisurely and remarked casually, "It seems you have little intention of aiding Byaking. The great Konghai Temple has only 2 mahas within, yet there are so many hidden intricacies." Haha, Chuadu smiled warmly and said, "The sacred soil of the great Konghai Temple is unlike that of the northern Buddhists. There are many complexities within. You and I are not the main forces in this battle. We merely lend our presence. Why delay each other's cultivation?" Li Ziming watched him in silence. The immortal mirror scan had revealed a deep and shadowy aura coiled beneath the reef. Clearly, another Purple Mansion realm ally lurked below. This Chuadu is truly cunning. That earlier stomp was merely an excuse, under the guise of battle, to slaughter the monks on his island. He appears to be a hot-tempered treasure elephant, yet this ruthlessness is far from simple. Chapter 1374, Tian Sanglin I. Li Ziming took a seat by the table. He could tell that this demon elephant was no simple being. He waved his hand and said, "Most demonic creatures at sea serve the Dragon Clan, especially those at the Purple Mansion realm. Yet you seem unrelated to the Dragon Clan. You are on good terms with Buddhist cultivators, and yet you do not appear to cultivate Buddhist methods. That is rather uncommon." After all, Buddhist cultivators are fond of their spirit beasts. Whenever they encountered a demonic creature, they would do their best to capture it and bring it into the Buddhist land as a mount. Demonic creatures loathe this behavior deeply, so there is naturally little reason for the 2 sides to get along. This demon elephant helped Buddhist cultivators, yet bore no sign of cultivating Buddhism. When questioned by Li Ziming, he sighed and said, "It is naturally related to my forebears." Li Ziming neither agreed nor disagreed. With the other party's temperament, resources, and circumstances, it was unlikely he was truly connected to any great figure. At most, he was borrowing a grand banner. Feigning surprise, Li Ziming asked, "May I ask which one?" The demonic creature hesitated, glanced at him, and said with a sigh, "Since you have asked, it would be improper to evade the matter openly. My ancestors once served the Qi state. Later we lived in the Great Desert. 20 years ago I broke through to the Purple Mansion realm and left the north, wandering until I arrived here. The Qi state has fallen for many years now, so there is no patron left to rely on. The Dragon Clan is not inclined to concern itself with me either. Fortunately, I managed to secure a piece of land for cultivation. I cultivate around the sea region, and I do not get along with Thunder Island. My closeness to the great Konghai Temple in daily matters is merely to draw upon them as support." Li Ziming found this rather strange. Among the 4 northern dynasties of Wei, Qi, Liang, and Zhao, Qi had been established when the Jai tribe entered the passes and replaced Wei, and was later slaughtered by the Chuoba family. His own lineage was often called Wei's Li. If one spoke frankly, they could hardly be considered friendly. No wonder the other party was so tense. Fortunately, the other party did not cultivate Buddhism and would not insist on settling such karmic ties. However, how much of his words were true or false remained unknown. Li Ziming would not fuss over it. He simply nodded. "You dwell in the outer sea near Buddhist land. Is that not like bargaining with a tiger? Are you not afraid of losing your autonomy and being absorbed? When he heard Li Ziming's calm tone, and that the latter showed no sign of sudden hostility, Chuadu felt the taut string in his heart ease slightly and replied, "What choice do I have? Fortunately, the one at the great Konghai Temple cannot act lightly. They send monks every day, and though it is exceedingly troublesome, it is still better than being forced into displacement and facing mortal danger. After all, not everyone is as amiable as you. The Chuoba family still remembers me to this day. Several Daos are eager to convert me, and even Chunni Dao Gate." He stopped abruptly and shook his head repeatedly. Li Ziming understood. After studying him for a moment, he spoke with some caution. "In that case, do you cultivate radiant essence?" Radiant essence could neutralize bright yang. Unfortunately, this Dao lineage was equally rare nowadays. Li Ziming had yet to encounter it. If the other party cultivated the Qi state's radiant essence, it would be troublesome indeed. Chuadu shook his head repeatedly and replied, "How could I have such fortune? I cultivate whatever my ancestors cultivated. Currently, I cultivate baleful essence." Li Ziming felt reassured and stroked his beard as he said, "That too is uncommon." If Chuadu cultivated radiant essence and then fell into Buddhist land, there would be no need to think further. He would surely gain a formidable enemy. Taking the opportunity, he asked, "May I ask the name of the Qi emperor?" The high ancestor of Qi was Kiji Tanluo. His hand name was Shichang. Though this demonic creature was clearly a descendant of Qi, he spoke of the founding emperor with surprising casualness. He glanced at Li Ziming with some confusion and said hesitantly, "You should know better than me." Kiji Tanluo suppressed the Wei Crown Prince Li Zengquan, granted the Hedao region to the Helian family, and established the Taifo state. It rose and fell through several generations and still stands beside Zhao state to this day. Li Ziming was in Jiangnan, and news from the north was almost entirely cut off by Buddhist cultivators. Since he rarely encountered someone from there, he took the opportunity to ask, "What is the situation in the north now?" Demonic creature's expression grew animated. Clearly, he had recounted this more than once. He replied with a cold laugh, "What else could it be? Zhao state has become a plaything ever since Fu Qian fell. The 7 Daos stand above, 4 kings hold power locally, and there are eunuchs cultivating veiled yin in the court. It has long been nothing but an empty shell. Fu Qian thought he was killing his way in to become emperor. Who would have thought his descendants would become toys instead? To the west, the Liang and Qiang are in chaos. To the east, Yan state is nothing more than the Murong family. Slightly to the south is the Bo Lai king of the Gao family, who has already unified the lands of Qi state. You could call him king of Qi and it would make little difference. Above them stand the Taifo state and the Chuoba family. The imperial house, the court, the feudal lords, and the Maha are all tangled together. It is far more chaotic than the south. At last, the demonic creature's expression carried some sincerity. He sighed deeply and said, "In such a troubled age, it is no place to rise to prominence. Even after reaching the Purple Mansion realm, I think only of fleeing farther away. Without a true monarch backing you, without a golden core realm ancestor above you, without a Taoist master father beside you, how could one dare to stand out in this situation? Not to mention Mount Luoxia." Li Ziming clicked his tongue. He had long known Zhao State's situation was suffocating, but had not imagined it had deteriorated to this extent. The white elephant before him had tested him repeatedly, and sensing little malice, continued, "Fellow Taoist Li, I have also heard of your reputation. It is said your alchemy is peerless. My baleful essence has formed into a divine ability, yet it cannot mature without proper pills. I cannot even produce a spirit embryo to nurture a spirit artifact. Most cultivators inland belong to the supreme Yang Dao lineage. They look down on others. The nearby factions refuse to deal with me, and the great Konghai Temple are Buddhist cultivators. If there is a chance in the future, LD ask you to refine some pills for me." Since they had met by chance, Li Ziming was extremely cautious. Moreover, the other party stood on the enemy's side, which could easily cause unnecessary misunderstandings. He frowned and said, "We shall speak of it another time. You should look after yourself. If you fall into Buddhist land, we will meet as enemies in the future." The two sat beneath the sea and talked for quite some time. The demonic creature circled around topics of spirit artifacts, spirit pills, and spirit arrays, while Li Ziming probed about the north. Both understood each other without stating it outright. Then the jade pendant in Li Ziming's sleeve flickered. The matter in the west had already been resolved. "Farewell." Li Ziming flicked his sleeve and said no more, vanishing into the great void. The demonic creature sighed deeply and returned to the island with a hint of schadenfreude. Emerging from the great void above the sea, he saw brilliant light flashing in the western sky. The radiance of Buddhist land shimmered in hues of pink. Zhasheng and the others had already succeeded. These cultivators from the southern sea and southern border are reliable. As expected, standing with the right side and lending support is far easier than fighting personally. Feeling at ease, Li Ziming rode his light and flew towards Songzhou. Zhongzhu's islands varied in size, forming a continuous archipelago divided into three main parts. Southern Shun Raksha lay in the southeastern corner, directly south of the current sea region. It was not far. Li Ziming crossed the strait in a streak of light and arrived. Chapter 1375, Tian Sanglin II. As a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, close to the peak of manifested power in this world, it was common to carve out a small domain and rule it. As Li Ziming descended, he saw black forests, low mountains, vast tracts divided and deserted. Only in the central region did he find dense black palaces. This faction did not appear benevolent. Li Ziming descended cautiously. His gaze swept over the palace roofs built around the hills and saw layers of chains and black qi everywhere. It was said that the Southern Shun Raksha king was at mid-stage Purple Mansion realm and cultivated the shamanic talisman Dao. He was not to be provoked. Halting in midair, Li Ziming transmitted his voice through divine ability. I am Li Ziming, named Zheajing, here to visit Southern Shun Raksha. I ask for the presence of the king. One Purple Mansion realm cultivator should have departed for the battle against Buddhist cultivators, leaving another on the island. Regardless of which it was, Li Ziming addressed him as king. After a moment, a black-armored cultivator rose on the wind and said, Taoist master, please come inside. Li Ziming descended in a streak of light, passing through layers of enveloping black qi. A massive ritual seat the size of a courtyard rested on the mountaintop. Seated upon it was a Dharma body, one hand holding a flower, the other forming a seal. It towered like a mountain, its eyes as large as chariots. It resembled a world-ravaging fiend within the black qi. Black-robed cultivators sat cross-legged in scattered clusters upon its knees, palms, and fingertips, cultivating in silent stillness. Though Li Ziming's heavenly light shone brilliantly, it seemed small before this Dharma body. Such a formidable Purple Mansion realm Dharma body. The other party did not cultivate the Purple Mansion golden core Daos, so his strength could not be measured by divine ability. Ling Mei had once mentioned that the person was at mid-stage Purple Mansion realm, and likely more than half his strength lay in this Dharma body. With one glance, Li Ziming suspected this Dharma body might not be inferior to any Maha. He gave a slight salute. A streak of black light coalesced before him into a white, bearded elder in black robes, who nodded and said, Please. This was a body condensed by the other party through divine ability. As Li Ziming had something to request, he nodded with a smile and followed in the manner of a junior. Upon entering the palace, the old shaman said, I am presently urging my Dharma body to observe northern Dan from within the great void, in case a great battle erupts in the west. I have neglected you, fellow Taoist. I would not dare. Passing through the gloomy, pitch-black palace, Li Ziming saw high-backed jade thrones everywhere. Li Ziming took his seat. The old man said quietly, My surname is Dilution. My given name is Sanglin. I was originally a person of Mount Yue of Yue State. Later, while wandering abroad, it proved inconvenient, so I took the character Tian from my surname. You may call me Tian Sanglin. As for the reputation of your family, I heard of it long ago. Whether Jiao Zhangzi or Hu Liua, both have cultivated on my island. I came to know your Li family from that time on. Li Ziming was momentarily stunned. The two names felt extremely familiar. He quickly understood. Back when Dunmu Qi had died, the people of Mount Wu scattered. The strongest among them was Jiao Zhangzi. When the Li family campaigned west against Mount Yue, Jiao Zhangzi had disappeared to attempt a breakthrough to the Purple Mansion realm. By the time they reached the westernmost part of Mount Yue, the only remaining Mount Wu Foundation establishment realm cultivator, Hu Liua, had also fled and vanished. Over the years, the Li family had encountered many factions and traveled to many places, yet there had never been any news of the two. They had thought they were hiding somewhere at the ends of the earth, living freely and arrogantly. They had not expected them to be here in Southern Shun Raksha. So they were people of Yue State. After thinking this through, Li Ziming hesitated slightly and asked, Senior Dunmu, was? Tian Sanglin replied calmly, I once received favor from Senior Dunmu. Though he cultivated the Purple Mansion golden core Daos, his shamanic arts could be called unparalleled in all ages. In my early years, I often visited the mountain. Jiao Zhangzi and Hu Liua were older and did not even know of my existence at the time. However, I had a junior named Dilution Fu who cultivated at Mount Wu and was close with them. He informed them of this retreat. Thus, when something happened at Mount Wu, the two of them came to seek me out one after the other. My junior fell during his breakthrough at Mount Wu. So that is how it was. Li Ziming nodded inwardly as realization dawned. Master once went to Mount Wu to retrieve Dilution Fu's belongings. It must not have been due to friendship with Xiao Chuchu, but because this man found it inconvenient to go himself and entrusted Taoist Master Xiao to bring the relics back. Thus, the bone-carving skin exchange obtained, then must also have belonged to Southern Shun Raksha. Just as his doubts were resolved, a chill rose in his heart. He asked, the one at Southern Shun Raksha who recently broke through to the Purple Mansion realm, was it Jiao Zhangzi? The old shaman let out two unpleasant chuckles and slightly raised his head. Indeed. Li Ziming's heart immediately sank. What one fears truly comes to pass. The Li family had not been on good terms with Mount Yue in their early years. Seizing Mount Yue's territory might mean little to Purple Mansion cultivator, yet Jiao Zhangzi had once left behind a subordinate and a mount at Mount Wu. There might have been some sentiment involved. That would not look good at all. Li Ziming's brows tightened at once, but Tian Sanglin gave a low cough and said softly, he has already severed his former ties. The affairs of Mount Wu have long ceased to concern Jiao Zhangzi. He cannot take on that karma, nor does he dare to. Li Ziming understood. The one thing a dignified Purple Mansion realm cultivator would not dare touch was that immortal text from back then. Dunmu Kui had received it directly from an immortal and could act without restraint, but who afterward would dare touch such a thing? Who would dare involve themselves with the Dao lineage of Mount Wu? Li Ziming sighed as he said, one matter is one matter. My family did offend him in the past. When the time comes, I will offer 2 spirit pills as compensation to show some sincerity. As they were speaking, an old man approached carrying a jade tray and bowed respectfully. My king, the treasure has been retrieved from the palace. A flicker of joy rose in Li Ziming's heart. He looked over and saw that the jade tray was as large as a table and entirely green in hue. A golden axe had been carefully placed on it. The golden axe had a long haft about a meter in length. The 2 corners of its blade curved like crescents. It did not appear crude, but rather delicate and compact. Beast scale patterns rippled across its surface, showing a heavy brown gold sheen that faintly reflected a soft silver light. A spirit artifact. Those of the outer sea were less ceremonious than those of Jiangnan. In the mainland, there would certainly have been lengthy pleasantries before such an item was brought forth. Li Ziming had only just stated his purpose, yet the Southern Shun Raksha king had already had it delivered while chatting casually. Li Ziming examined it carefully. Aside from the carved beast-scale motifs, there were no other patterns across its body. Small, simple star diagrams were etched on both faces, their lines shallow, as if not wishing to disturb the weighty texture of the surface. He was very familiar with this diagram. It was the Surging Yang Star Command diagram. The 2 sides were front and back, clearly meant for hanging, with a defined facing side. Li Ziming's heart stirred as he asked, Senior, may I ask the name of this spirit artifact? Leaning against the throne, Tian Sanglin replied in a hoarse voice, it is the brilliant Yang Kai. Nji's axe, an item of the Eastern Fire Grotto heaven. It shatters corruption and punishes the disloyal, bringing light to mountains and rivers and illuminating the people. Its divine ability is Crimson Severing Cluster. It can bear the weight of 10,000 chariots and sweep away all calamities. Chapter 1376, Brilliant Yang King's Axe, I. Chapter 1376, Brilliant Yang King's Axe, I. The old man carrying the tray stepped forward and presented the brilliant Yang King's axe to Li Ziming with both hands. Li Ziming accepted it lightly, feeling heat scorch his palm as the patterns upon it brightened and dimmed. Tian Sanglin examined it closely as he continued. This object once hung in the pavilion atop Northern Return Peak within the Eastern Fire Grotto heaven. According to Ning Tiaxiao, the master of that cave dwelling was named Li Guangfu. He was neither extravagant nor wealthy and had already fallen into decline. When the various families stormed the grotto heaven, the dwelling was almost completely empty. The master cleared away everything, leaving behind only the brilliant Yang King's axe, a symbol of authority and glory. The Kui family held him in great respect. It seems no one had ever dared to take the brilliant Yang King's axe. Li Ziming listened carefully. Tian Sanglin dismissed the old man and said, the axe body should be forged from grace-bestowed prolonged radiance bronze and refined with the Purple Mansion realm spirit item Radiant Light Origin Essence and Heavenly Shi Stone. That is why it carries the light of radiant fire. When Ning Tiaxiao retrieved this item, he judged that Ning Wan's cold essence was incompatible with it. Bright yang and radiant fire together, however, could assist me in refining my Dharma body. Li Ziming nodded slightly and asked, to be frank, Senior, I have only recently reached the Purple Mansion realm and have yet to obtain a suitable weapon. When I requested the Supreme Yang Dao lineage's help in reaching out to you about this item, I had the intention of trading for it. After all, Li Ziming was seeking a fine spirit artifact. If the other party had no intention of trading it or felt no need to do so, any further words would be meaningless. Tian Sanglin nodded. Zheujing, do not overthink it. Since Ning Wan consulted me about this matter and I allowed her to invite you here, I naturally have my own considerations. Li Ziming smiled and nodded as the other continued. Bright yang is inherently domineering, and this object is a king's axe. After I finished refining my Dharma body, using it myself did not align well with the shamanic talisman Dao. Its applications are conventional. In battle, it is somewhat heavy and not ideal for fending off enemies. Moreover, it cannot be allowed to fall lightly. If a strike misses, it instead harms one's divine abilities and mana. At this point, Li Ziming understood that this spirit artifact could complement his own divine ability. A combination of suppression from the heaven-venerating gate and a single cleaving strike of the axe would be nearly impossible to evade without body divine abilities. As expected, one's own divine abilities pair best with one's own spirit artifact. Having encountered so many of the merciful ones, Li Ziming's worries had grown heavier by the day. Now, upon seeing such a spirit artifact, it was impossible not to feel tempted. Stroking his beard, he said, "May I ask what Senior requires?" Tian Sanglin rose from his throne and clapped his hands lightly. "First, I want the 9-colored profound mercury." Those words rendered Li Ziming silent, his lips parting yet no words emerging. 9-colored profound mercury had been obtained during the siege and killing of Wang Fu. A dignified Purple Mansion Realm spirit item falling into the hands of the Li family had only remained there because Hangzhou valued reputation and upheld the orthodox Dao, allowing them to preserve it on their behalf. Had it been another Dao lineage, even if they refrained from outright seizing it, it would likely have been forcibly traded away long ago. After Li Ziming reached the Purple Mansion Realm, the item had been sent to Moongaze Lake, intended for Li Qiuan's future breakthrough into the Purple Mansion Realm. There had never been any thought of using it otherwise. Yet if this item could be exchanged for a bright Yang spirit artifact, Li Ziming would not hesitate much. The pressing priority was to strengthen himself and stabilize the situation before Li Xiaowei's breakthrough. Should any upheaval arise in matters concerning the true monarch, the value of a spirit artifact would far surpass that of the 9-colored profound mercury, gathering dust in storage. As for Qiuan, she is still far from the Purple Mansion Realm. We can wait until Xiaowei emerges from seclusion before making further plans. Yet Tian Sanglin had not finished speaking. He turned his head and continued, "Besides this item, I also want a spirit pill, the bright truth harmonizing divine pill. It flowed out from the great Ning Palace. It is not in your possession, but the Xi family has it, the Gao family has it, and even the 3 sects and 7 gates each hold a portion." Yet he did not stop, "And if I lose this spirit artifact, the foundation of my Southern Shun Raksha lineage will weaken. At the very least, it must be compensated with a spirit embryo. Naturally, you can trade a Supreme Shaman spirit embryo as the price to my Southern Shun Raksha." Li Ziming had at most hoped that the other party would request assistance in suppressing Maha. After all, he and the Buddhist cultivators were already mortal enemies, and at worst he would suffer injuries. But a spirit artifact was tangible strength. Unfortunately, the Southern Shun Raksha had long secured its foundations in Songzhou and had no mortal enemies to exploit, leaving no such opportunity. Every demand now meant heavy losses, his brows furrowed with faint displeasure. In short, the Southern Shun Raksha not only wanted to secure spirit pills and spirit items, but also required a spirit embryo as compensation.
The price is truly too great.
He slowly straightened and said softly, "Senior, the 9-colored profound mercury is already a rare spirit item in this world, especially in these times when the whole pill no longer manifests. It would be one thing to ask for that alone, but you have also asked for the Supreme Yang Dao lineage's bright truth harmonizing divine pill and a Supreme Shaman spirit embryo. If I had such influence, I would not have needed to come to the Southern Sea at all. I could simply seek out a few friends and refine a spirit artifact myself. Would that not be far better?" Li Ziming remained amiable outwardly and smiled as he said, "If this were Ziyuqi's surging Yang Star Command treasure disk, I would not hesitate in the slightest. I would even throw in my mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger without a second thought. But as Senior yourself said, this spirit artifact is quite heavy and not some profound marvel." Tian Sanglin was advanced in years and sharp of eye. He did not yield in the slightest and shook his head. "That is not correct. The 9-colored profound mercury is precious. Our radiant light origin essence, grace-bestowed prolonged radiance bronze, and heavenly she stone inferior. The difference amounts only to 1 pill and 1 spirit embryo to make up the gap. It is already quite fair." He laughed heartily and said, "I do not know whether to call you fortunate. If it were someone else, knowing only that this object is heavy, they might not fare much better even if they obtained it. It only shows remarkable effect when paired with certain divine abilities. I happen to have some experience, and I have indeed seen another king's axe. Precisely because it is a king's axe, it dominates the world when strong, and invites calamity when weak. Once it falls into the hands of a cultivator, whose bright Yang divine ability has reached great accomplishment, this spirit artifact reveals an entirely different bearing. Tian Sanglin had never looked like a benevolent figure. He already bore the appearance of a devilish overlord, and now his gaze was laden with meaning, his smile carrying a faint chill. Therefore, I know its worth. In the eyes of your family, this object is truly a treasure. His attitude was resolute and left no room for compromise. In truth, Li Ziming knew the demands, though painful, were not unreasonable, yet he still sighed. I do have some refining methods for spirit embryos. Though I am not versed in the Supreme Shaman Dao, I could consult Ziyu Kui. But this bright truth harmonizing divine pill, such a precious spirit pill, I would have to expend an enormous amount of personal favor to obtain it. Tian Sanglin said nothing and merely took a sip of tea. Li Ziming's eyelids twitched. Just as he was about to speak, a gust of gray wind swept into the hall and transformed into a young man. He was tall and thin, clad in black robes and black boots, bearing the look of a devil cultivator. A red mark adorned the space between his brows. Gray cloth bands were tied around both sleeves. A jade pendant hung at his waist, and a large bow was slung across his back. His complexion was slightly sallow, giving him the air of a hunter. He strode briskly into the hall. Upon suddenly seeing Li Ziming, his pupils widened slightly in recognition, and a flicker of shock crossed his face. However, the devil cultivator quickly reined in his emotions. With a peculiar look in his eyes, he first bowed to Tian Sanglin. "Greetings, my king." Tian Sanglin nodded. The young man then turned and said gently, "I am Jiao Zhangzi. Greetings, fellow Taoist Jiajing." Seeing him stride in from outside the hall with a bow on his back, head held high and chest out, Li Ziming was momentarily distracted. He coughed lightly. "Greetings, fellow Taoist." Li Ziming replied with slight embarrassment. "As for what happened before, I offended you." Jiao Zhangzi waved his hand and sat down to the side with a smile. "I heard from the Miao family that a cultivator had come to southern Shun Raksha to exchange for a spirit artifact, so it is fellow Taoist Jiajing. You have come to exchange for the brilliant Yang King's axe, have you not?" Though he cultivated the shamanic talisman Dao, a faint flicker of flame glimmered between his brows. Li Ziming took note inwardly and smiled wryly. "That is correct. It is only that my lake is impoverished. I fear I cannot satisfy senior." Oh, Jiao Zhangzi responded softly and glanced at Tian Sanglin seated above. An unspoken exchange quickly passed between them. Then he smiled and said, "It seems we must trouble you to refine a spirit embryo. It is not that my king intends to make things difficult for you. Our shamanic talisman Dao is not like the Purple Mansion Golden Core Daos. We lack the means to refine spirit embryos, nor do we have the corresponding Dao lineage for nurturing one slowly. Only your Purple Mansion Golden Core Daos have cultivated the Supreme Shaman Dao. We would merely borrow it for use." Yao Zhangzi was clearly far more eloquent than Tian Sanglin, and his attitude was unexpectedly amicable. He smiled and said, "My king has won himself. It is only that I have yet to obtain a spirit embryo since my breakthrough. Thus I thought to ask fellow Taoist for assistance. Whether you require a Dharma artifact or any materials, you may name your price." The implication had shifted. Tian Sanglin had demanded that he provide a spirit embryo outright, but Jiao Zhangzi's words had turned into a matter of assisting in refinement, which was far less burdensome. Li Ziming's eyes brightened as he thought it over. Tian Sanglin remained silent, as if acquiescing. Li Ziming was rather tempted. He nodded while remaining inwardly cautious. Could it be that the old and the young are playing good cop and bad cop, inflating the price from the outset? Chapter 1377, Brilliant Yang King's Axe, II. Chapter 1377, Brilliant Yang King's Axe, II. Jiao Zhangzi smiled in satisfaction and was about to continue, but Tian Sanglin said first in a hoarse voice, "If fellow Taoist agrees, then the matter is settled thus. If not, you may return. A spirit artifact is not something to be lent out." Li Ziming rose and bowed. "Thank you for your understanding, senior. However, the 9-colored profound mercury is at the lake, and I am unfamiliar with the bright truth harmonizing divine pill. I must consult a friend before making a final decision." Tian Sanglin frowned slightly, but Jiao Zhangzi stood up with a smile and replied, "As it should be." He turned to Tian Sanglin and said respectfully, "There is no need to trouble my king. I can accompany fellow Taoist Jiajing with the Dharma artifact and spirit artifact. If all is feasible, we can exchange the spirit artifact and bring the 9-colored profound mercury back to you at once. With the Supreme Yang Dao lineage as witness, subsequent matters will be easier to arrange." Li Ziming understood inwardly, so the Southern Shun Raksha King is quite tempted by the 9-colored profound mercury as well. These words suited Li Ziming perfectly and eased Tian Sanglin's furrowed brow. He nodded, signaled briefly to Li Ziming, and transformed into black smoke before dispersing. Li Ziming thanked the young man and stepped with him into the great void. He felt a trace of emotion and probed cautiously, I had thought there were still misunderstandings between us. This time, I must thank you for your assistance." "Assistance?" Zhao Zhangzi laughed softly as he turned and replied, "It hardly counts. If I missed this opportunity with you, who knows how long it would take before my king found another spirit embryo for me. I am naturally the most anxious. Ziyuqi and I have never been on good terms, and it would not be easy to seek one elsewhere. Once that spirit embryo ends up in my hands, whether its effects are wondrous or not, and which kind suits me best, those are what truly concern me." Since he was being so frank, Li Ziming immediately nodded. Half convinced, half doubtful, he traveled inland with him and asked with a smile, "How is Beiyuqing?" The Mount Yue native showed a trace of schadenfreude and replied, "The temple master of Great Konghai Temple did not budge at all. He obediently discarded his Dharma body and returned to the Buddhist land. Stone Pond has now been divided among the various families. One could say everyone is satisfied." He had spoken with Chuadu at sea for some time. It had been the most perfunctory battle Li Ziming had fought since reaching the Purple Mansion realm. Agreeing inwardly, he began to harbor doubts about Great Konghai Temple's arrangement and probed. Beiyuqing seized Stone Pond and caught the Azure. Pond sect off guard, but it cannot last without the prestige of the supreme Yang Dao lineage. Zhao Zhangzi clasped his hands behind his back and smiled, shaking his head. "Not so, Zheijing. You must know that the temple master Jinghai has not reincarnated for 100 years. Not only has he not reincarnated, he cannot even leave the Buddhist land." "But why has the temple master of Great Konghai Temple not reincarnated for so many years? Is it because he does not wish to?" "No, it is because there is no Dharma master presiding above him, and his position is unstable. Someone must sit upon the heavenly rain Mandarava flower to preside over that Buddhist land." So Jinghai has been in an extremely awkward position for all these years, patching one side while tearing down another. He finally endured long enough to secure a seat. After much thought, he gave it to no one else but Beiyuqing, who bears a blood feud with the Azure Pond sect. It was nothing more than caution. Once he leaves, he must relinquish the position of presiding over the Buddhist land. He fears that someone might seize it afterward, so he needs a Maha who cannot help but rely on him. Zhao Zhangzi let out a cold laugh as he finished. "Now it is perfect." Beiyuqing returned severely wounded and unable to move. He can barely maintain the Buddhist land while making mortal enemies of nearly every surrounding force. What can he dare to do? He can only remain Jinghai's dog. Li Ziming immediately understood. His doubts about Stone Pond vanished at once. With that settled, another inference arose in his mind. Since Jinghai has achieved his objective, it is the Azure Pond sect that suffered the most. In the end, the various families carved up the Azure Pond sect's Stone Pond. The two traveled through the Great Void for a time and soon arrived at Lake Xi'an. Zhao Zhangzi halted cautiously, a faint flame flickering at his brow, and said softly, "Fellow Taoist, please retrieve the 9-colored profound mercury." Li Ziming nodded and rose on a beam of light, moving some distance away. He was slightly uneasy as he used the jade talisman at his waist to contact Ningguan. After a brief wait, light shimmered within the Great Void. Moments later, wind and snow gathered as Ningguan arrived riding upon drifting frost. Seeing Li Ziming, she smiled and said gently, "Congratulations, Zheijing, all is well. The Lord sent a sword and has already taken Fei Qingye away. Her affairs henceforth will be entrusted to Ziyuqi." Li Ziming let out a soft breath of relief and began to express his thanks. Ningguan smiled politely and asked, "As for Southern Shun Raksha, were the negotiations successful?" Li Ziming replied, "We have more or less reached an agreement. They only require a bright truth harmonizing divine pill, said to be held in portions by the supreme Yang Dao lineage. I do not know what it is. Is it considered precious?" Ningguan pondered briefly and said, "That item should originate from the Great Ning Palace. It is a spirit pill of the true essence Dao and has been lost for many years. Back then, 3 pills were stored in each great cauldron, with 4 cauldrons totaling 12 pills. The Xi family obtained 1 cauldron, which was recovered by Xuanfeng. In ancient times, the bright truth harmonizing divine pill was highly sought after. It was a treasured asset of Ning state for uniting the various families. It was said to support the 9 Qis, harmonize past and present, refine pill talismans, and enhance divine abilities. I do not know how the heterodox Daos use it, but for our Purple Mansion Golden Core Daos, it can somewhat assist Purple Mansion realm cultivators in catalyzing their immortal foundation into divine abilities." Li Ziming nodded and Ningguan continued, "Of the Xi family's 3 pills, Senior Yuanxiu has certainly used 1. The remaining 2 are in Xi Yuanli's possession, but he is currently in seclusion. If he succeeds, you may exchange for 1 from him. Failing that, the Gao family or Ziyuqi are options. With your alchemical art, obtaining 1 should not be too difficult." Li Ziming now had a clear idea. If he were a bit shameless, he could delay matters while Xi Yuanli remained in seclusion. once the spirit artifact was in his hands, claiming he was waiting to exchange with the Xi family would be a reasonable excuse. After all, my reputation precedes me. If I take their item, it is best to do my utmost to secure the exchange for Southern Shun Raksha. It is better to make friends than enemies.
Many thanks, Fairy.
He bowed in farewell and headed toward the lake. Passing through layers of formations and activating hidden mechanisms, he retrieved the small silver-white box from within the formation and returned to Lake Xian. Zhao Zhangzi waited patiently at Lake Xian. When he saw Li Ziming arrive on a beam of light, he said with anticipation, "Fellow Taoist Jiajing."
Li Ziming lifted the lid of the
silver-white box, revealing a 1-inch streak of brilliant white radiance within. He sealed it with his divine ability to prevent it from transforming away and replied with equal anticipation, "Please take a look." Zhao Zhangzi paused for a breath and smiled. "It is indeed 9-colored profound mercury. The quality is excellent. Many thanks, fellow Taoist." At this point, Zhao Zhangzi visibly relaxed and said with a sigh, "Our Southern Shun Raksha has long lacked this whole pill. We searched with great difficulty. Taoist Master Qiushui's divine abilities have grown ever more complete, and most whole pill Purple Mansion Realm spirit items in the past decades were bought up at high prices by the Golden Feather sect. We could not find one anywhere. It was only because Hangzhou Dao Gate and the Golden Feather sect were at odds and failed to reach an agreement did Hangzhou Dao Gate preserve this portion for your esteemed family without using it." Li Ziming had already discerned this. The other spirit pills and assistance in refining a spirit embryo were merely additions. They had long coveted the 9-colored profound mercury. Otherwise, why hand over the spirit artifact first? The values were not equal, and they feared he might raise the price on the spot while also being eager to secure this spirit item. He smiled faintly. "It is simply the turning of fate. It is your opportunity as well as mine." "Excellent." Zhao Zhangzi clapped his hands in satisfaction. Reaching into his sleeve, he produced a short blade with an ivory edge and a jade hilt and said with a smile, "This is the Silken Bond Blade. It is an ancient Dharma artifact of excellent quality that I obtained by chance. I entrust it to you. When there is news, simply send a jade slip to Southern Shun Raksha." Li Ziming received it solemnly. Only then did the other take out a jade box from his sleeve and casually flip it open with a divine ability, revealing the brilliant Yang King's axe within. A dense golden radiance burst forth. Li Ziming accepted it with both hands, feeling the weight sink into his palms. His eyes burned with longing, and the fatigue from all his rushing about finally dissipated.
It truly was not easy.
It was a heartfelt sigh. Li Ziming's fixation on spirit artifacts ran deep. Whether fighting Yehui or Cheng Xiao, he had always been suppressed by their spirit artifacts and suffered greatly. Later, when the surging Yang Star Command treasure disc rested in his hands, he had been reluctant to let it go. From that moment on, his obsession had only deepened. He had traveled to the Southern Sea, running about everywhere, even parting with the spirit item he had kept in reserve. Now, holding the weighty brilliant Yang King's axe in his hands, though it was only the length of an arm, its heavy golden sheen mingled with faint silver sandlight brought him a sense of reassurance. As Zhao Zhangzi released his spiritual sense and erased its mark, ownership of the spirit artifact shifted. A surging bright Yang divine ability climbed along the long, rounded haft of the axe, quickly dyeing the scale-like patterns gold. The hidden runes beneath lit up one by one. The spirit artifact seemed to come alive, casting down waves of light. After several hundred years, the brilliant Yang King's axe was finally infused once more with a bright Yang divine ability. It trembled with spirit and emitted crisp metallic chimes.
Clang, clang, clang. Boom!
Heavenly light blazed brilliantly. Li Ziming loosened his grip slightly, and the brilliant Yang King's axe immediately rose, assuming a posture as if upheld by heavenly radiance itself. It hovered quietly before him. A heavy aura spread at once, clouding the great void and stirring the spiritual energy into waves. Infused with the heaven-venerating gate divine ability, the spirit artifact released an intense pressure. Zhao Zhangzi's body sank slightly under its weight, and the chirping of cicadas seemed to echo faintly through the great void. Li Ziming could not help but close his eyes briefly and commune with the spirit artifact. The Mount Yue Purple Mansion Realm cultivator stepped back calmly and watched. When Li Ziming exhaled a wisp of pale purple flame, the brilliant Yang King's axe descended like a falling star and was drawn into the heavenly light at the center of his brow. A faint golden axe-shaped pattern flashed behind Li Ziming. Stimulated by his divine ability, twin sparks flared at Zhao Zhangzi's brow before quickly being suppressed. It was clearly his first time witnessing such wonder from this spirit artifact. He sighed deeply and said, "Congratulations, Jiajing. The brilliant Yang King's axe has finally found its rightful wielder." Li Ziming felt an urge to stop and test the spirit artifact at once. In high spirits, everyone now seemed agreeable to him. He smiled at the Mount Yue cultivator before him. Many thanks, fellow Taoist.
Though the flame at Jiao Zh.
Ongzi's brow had only flickered briefly. Li Ziming, ever sensitive to fire, immediately sensed its formidable nature and praised, I did not expect fellow Taoist to be such a master of flame. Oh, Zhao Zhangzi raised a brow with a smile. Layer upon layer of reddish-brown flames surged from beneath his feet, climbing along his Taoist robe as he said, I have heard of your profound fire of the three phases guard. Mine is the lesser Yang fire of the lesser Yang Dao. When there is an opportunity in the future, we should exchange pointers. He cupped his hands in salute and transformed into flame, rising and departing southward, leaving behind a faint streak of light. Fellow Taoist Jiajing, the days ahead are long. We will have many chances to meet again.
Chapter 1378, Seclusion I. Moongai's Lake.
The sky was dim and hazy. Radiant fire surged around the viewing pavilion, its blazing light shooting into the heavens and illuminating the surroundings in brilliance. Li Ziming strode past on a trail of light and glanced toward the pavilion. The progress of the ruler of manifested mountains and rivers above it was going well, and Chu Minglian was carefully adjusting the fire. In high spirits, he nodded to himself and stepped into Zhaijing Mountain, taking a seat by the table. A flicker of heavenly light stirred between his brows, and he summoned the brilliant Yang King's axe.
A bright Yang spirit artifact.
Although both spirit artifacts and spirit embryos were Purple Mansion realm weapons, they were worlds apart. They could not be compared in combat. Moreover, spirit artifacts were heirlooms passed down through generations. As Li Ziming refined the brilliant Yang King's axe, he discovered that it was indeed somewhat different. Compared to the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger, with its monotonous 3 divine functions, the brilliant Yang King's axe possessed a full 5 divine functions in his hands. 2 of them had been mentioned by Tian Sanglin. The primary function of the brilliant Yang King's axe was light splitting, reputed to break corruption, punish the disloyal, never lend lightly, and strike with lethal force once set in motion. Light splitting was also the axe's only offensive method. It carried the enemy-breaking might of bright Yang, yet it descended exceedingly slowly. If it missed, then even if the same amount of divine ability and mana were used the next time, its power would greatly decline. According to Tian Sanglin, light splitting originated from the bright Yang divine ability Crimson Severing Cluster, and its limitations likely stemmed from that source. The second was bright light, embodying radiant mountains and rivers that illuminated the people. Once the spirit artifact was suspended aloft, it could grant augmentation to allies. Li Ziming examined it briefly. This divine function was fairly standard for a Purple Mansion realm cultivator. When attached to the Dharma body, it was equivalent to a slightly weaker stable earth spirit containment, though its restrictions were far fewer. The key lies in the fact that stable earth does not conflict with bright Yang. In other words, these 2 augmentations can be used simultaneously, making it easier to deal with the merciful one. After all, stable earth spirit containment could not withstand the 12 essences or fire virtue, which imposed severe limitations. It would likely offer little advantage against immortal cultivators, and Li Ziming's instinctive imagined opponent was naturally a Buddhist cultivator. Aside from these 2 combat functions, the remaining 3 were more intriguing. Tian Sanglin had not mentioned them. They required catalysis through bright Yang divine abilities to be activated. Among them, the one Li Ziming valued most was Command Axe. Dominates the world when strong and invites calamity when weak, able to bear the weight of 10,000 chariots, sweeping away every calamity. Those were not empty words. The power of the brilliant Yang King's axe is indeed influenced by bright Yang divine abilities. At present it can only be considered average, but the more bright Yang divine abilities one cultivates, the greater its might. Taking the Purple Mansion threshold as the boundary, anything below 3 divine abilities has already been weakened. Once bright Yang reaches great completion with all 5 gathered, this weapon will likely be no inferior to an ancient spirit artifact. Li Ziming felt both envy and bitterness. He had yet to cross the Purple Mansion threshold, and achieving great completion in bright Yang felt like a distant dream. For now, he placed his hopes on Li Xiaowei and quietly found comfort in that. The remaining were minor divine functions, namely flame exhalation and misplaced entrustment. Flame exhalation was clearly just a small bonus. Once the brilliant Yang King's axe was summoned, it would add a mouthful of radiant fire to Li Ziming's breath, somewhat stronger tea. Hand that within the juke acupoint, though the effect was not especially remarkable. So exhaling the profound fire of the 3 phases guard counts as icing on the cake. By this point, Li Ziming was undoubtedly satisfied. Only misplaced entrustment left him unsure whether to laugh or sigh.
The command axe must not be wrongly entrusted. Once granted to another, it signifies inability to control it. This divine function, misplaced entrustment, had only one effect. The brilliant Yang King's axe could not be casually lent to others. Whether a Dharma artifact or a spirit artifact, as long as the owner consented and opened their mind, it could be temporarily lent to another. When Li Ziming used Kueki's surging Yang Star Command treasure disk, it had been exactly so. The spirit artifact still belonged to Kueki, but it had been entrusted to Li Ziming for temporary use. In this way, although Li Ziming would not wield it as smoothly and each divine function would consume more mana, there was no need to transfer ownership of the spirit artifact. This not only avoided the trouble of divine ability imprinting, but also reduced many hidden risks. If Kueki truly needed it, he could summon the surging Yang Star Command treasure disk back through the Great Void. If Li Ziming refused to return it, the time required for refinement would be greatly prolonged, and Kueki could still trace it through their connection. But the divine function of the brilliant Yang King's axe cut off any possibility of casual lending. Once this item was transferred, it had to be returned voluntarily by the other party. Otherwise, the spirit artifact would be as good as lost to the depths. So there is such a divine function. No wonder Tian Sanglin said it should never be lent out. He weighed the handy spirit artifact in his palm and was naturally very satisfied. In both divine functions and sheer strength, the brilliant Yang King's axe surpassed the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger by an entire tier. Although the stable tiger escape spell of the mountain-charging sea-pacing tiger had played a significant role when Li Ziming was fleeing for his life, it felt rather useless in ordinary times. He thought to himself, it is not just the difference between spirit artifacts. It is likely also because I am not a stable earth cultivator. As for the brilliant Yang King's axe ability to be stored within heavenly light or to release radiant light and similar methods, those were miscellaneous divine functions tied to divine abilities, merely embellishments on top of its main strengths. He withdrew the spirit artifact into the heavenly light between his brows and carefully nurtured, and cleansed it once with his divine ability. Once light and shadow had finished interweaving, he rose and summoned Li Jianqian. Soon Li Jianqian entered the mountain holding a jade box and bowed. Greetings, Taoist master. Li Ziming briefly mentioned the matter of the brilliant Yang King's axe with a smile, prompting Li Jianqian to look up in delight and offer repeated congratulations. Li Ziming waved his hand and said no more, signaling him to begin his report. Li Jianqian opened the long jade box, revealing a pure black Dharma sword within. Li Ziming glanced at it. Upon seeing the sword's form, his expression shifted slightly and he immediately stood up. He first used the immortal mirror to ensure no one was present. Only then did he take up the Dharma sword and examine it carefully, his eyes narrowing as he said, "It truly is extremely similar." Li Jianqian nodded deeply and reported all the details from beginning to end before continuing. From the moment the Lord has left, I issued orders for investigation. Of the 4 Dharma swords, aside from Black Stream, the remaining 3, Falling Laurel, Sea Sundering, and Piercing Heart, are in the hands of Master Beiyin, Han Li, and Song Yunbai. The Sword of Converging Water is in the hands of a cultivator named Han Li. No one knows where he emerged from. We have only heard his name mentioned by the Lord. There is not a single other piece of information about him. It will likely be difficult to obtain. One of Radiant Fire, Piercing Heart, is in Song Yunbai's possession. This one is the easiest to seize. Although Song Yunbai is not in the capital, the Song family is within the territory of the Locust Soul Hall. We have already obtained a portrait. He withdrew a scroll from his sleeve and gently unfurled it. Upon it, rendered in exquisite brushwork, was a crimson Dharma sword. Its patterns were somewhat more intricate than those of Black Stream, and it was slightly longer as well. Not only was the color different, but there was no ornament hanging from the pommel. Clearly, this Piercing Heart could be ruled out. Master Beiyin's Falling Laurel belongs to the Supreme Yin. After parting from the Lord, he once appeared in the Great Desert. We sent people to inquire twice and obtain information from the Zhuang family that he traveled northward, heading toward the river. As for his sword, according to Zhuang Cheng, the blade was concealed within its sheath and its form could not be seen. However, a corner of the hilt was exposed, and it was gray. Unfortunately, he said he saw no hanging ornament. Chapter 1379, Seclusion II. Li Ziming's gaze darkened slightly as he said calmly, "If there was no ornament, it may simply have been put away. The fragment looks like an ordinary object. Master Beiyin could not possibly discern its true purpose. He may have stored it inside a storage pouch. This man must be closely watched. Since he passed through the Great Desert, the Golden Feather sect most likely knows of his movements. However, if he continues north, he will enter the territory of the Golden Tang Gate. We should inquire with the Golden Feather sect about his sword.
Fortunately, it is a Dharma sword. Our family has every reason to speak up and negotiate in exchange. I have already sent a few people over. We dared not act too aggressively. If it were not a sword, I might not have even dared to send anyone to investigate. Li Jianqian cupped his hands and said, as for the north, a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator from the Locust Soul Hall fell yesterday. It is clear that the Lord has already begun to act. A few days ago, a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator also perished in the capital Immortal Dao. Guan Gongxiao has withdrawn his forces. The devil cultivators have already secured their foothold. He took a small letter from his sleeve and said quietly, Guan Gongxiao has once again requested reinforcements. He hopes our family will lend assistance. Li Ziming gave no clear response. In the past, Yehui had schemed on behalf of Cheng Xiao against their family. However, he had deliberately withheld his full strength and harbored ulterior motives. Li Ziming had ultimately escaped with his life. Though he held no goodwill toward the man, he had always instructed his family to maintain neutrality with the capital Immortal Dao. Yehui also appeared unwilling to tear relations apart. He had also behaved himself during the years of Li Ziming's absence. That did not mean he was weak. He had obtained the Daoxuan Dao lineage and possessed several spirit artifacts. He was not someone to provoke lightly. Li Ziming still did not know where Cheng Xiao was. Thus, he decided to extend some goodwill toward the capital Immortal Dao. Li Jianqian had clearly reported this news with a similar intention in mind. Li Ziming said, send him a reply. Tell him he has my verbal directive to hold fast to his mountain gate and wait for some time. Li Jianqian bowed and nodded. Li Ziming raised his brows and said, since he has reached Foundation Establishment Realm and 3 years have passed, the Locust Soul Hall has little ability to resist. If he intends to head north, he will likely set out within a year or two. Pay close attention to the matter of the sword. I only hope it is not that spirit embryo. Li Jianqian agreed and said softly, there is one more matter to report. Taoist Master, Great Uncle Chengzhai, passed away earlier. Li Ziming tightened his grip on the jade cup and finally let out a sigh as he said quietly, I know. Given Li Jianqian's control over the Li family, he naturally knew that Li Ziming had met Li Chengzhai. He immediately lowered his head, changed the subject, and continued. Fortunately, after Uncle Zhuming finished handling the Lord's affairs, he took the pills prepared by the family and successfully broke through to the 8th stage of the Qi cultivation realm. Now we are preparing to have him take that talisman pill to break through to the 9th stage of the Qi cultivation realm, so that he may attempt the Foundation Establishment realm. Good, Li Ziming nodded and asked, how are the family sacrifices? You have not sought a talisman, have you? No, Li Jianqian bowed and said, now that the Purple Mansion Realm Grand Formation has been established, we performed incense sacrifices and obtained 3 talisman pills. As for talisman seeds, most of the children in the family have not yet grown. The direct line cultivators of the Crimson Palace are numerous, and their fertility is not very good. My younger brothers are all unmarried. Only Jiangzhang has a child, not yet a year old. Li Jianqian handed over the 3 pills and said with a smile, earlier, I had thought of receiving a talisman to help the family, but we lacked the protection of a grand formation. Now there is no rush. I am only at the early stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm, and my cultivation speed is still fast. I can wait until after reaching the Purple Mansion Realm to receive the talisman and use talisman Qi to elevate my divine abilities. At the very least, I can seek a strand of talisman Qi at the middle or late stage of the Foundation Establishment Realm. Thus this time it was presided over by the old elder. I did not step onto the platform. Li Ziming nodded and said with a sigh, indeed, people are often trapped in the hardships of the late Qi cultivation realm and late Foundation Establishment Realm, spending vast amounts of time. It is only upon reaching Purple Mansion Realm that they realize that it is divine abilities that are truly difficult to advance. No matter how wondrous the spirit pills, they add only a fraction. At this point, Li Jianqian reminded him, since Taoist Master has already broken through to the Purple Mansion Realm, talisman pills can be taken again. The sacrificial ritual method states that this pill can break through bottlenecks and advance cultivation. It should also have an effect on divine abilities. Li Ziming pondered and replied, I have considered this matter and am weighing it. Since you have brought it up, you may speak freely. Although I traveled the outer sea and took quite a few spirit pills, Heaven Venerating Gate has already reached minor completion. I still have 2 spirit pills in hand. With thus much accumulation, great completion is not far. I had thought it would take only 5 or 6 years more, so I considered saving them for the next divine ability. Li Jianqian understood at once and bowed. Once the Lord heads north and returns to the mountains, Zhangbei will surely erupt into contention. There will be many great battles. Not only the immortal Taoist masters will be involved. Northern Buddhist cultivators may also intervene. It will not be so simple. Li Ziming rose with his hands behind his back and said, indeed, My haste in seeking spirit artifacts everywhere is for the same reason. It will not only be mainland Taoist masters, but those from both the mainland and the outer sea will also come to take a look. Even if fate cannot be divided, someone like Fei Qingye is a prime spirit herb in their eyes. Moreover, with such generosity from that lord, whether Fei Tongkai or Master Beiyin, after so many years would they not expect to share? Not to mention those who would fish in troubled waters. His expression remained calm and his tone firm as he said, "Now that we have a clue, everything else can be discarded, but the fragment must not be lost. This matter cannot be left to chance. I will write a letter to Ning Wan while immediately entering seclusion to take the pill and use the talisman pill to raise my divine ability to great completion. No matter when the true monarch heads north, the return is fixed at 6 years and 6 months. Only when the return is certain will these people act. There is ample time." Li Jiangqian nodded. The Taoist master continued with his hands behind his back. "Fortunately, the Eastern Fire Grotto heaven stands before us. Spirit items and spirit artifacts of Bright Yang are not scarce under heaven, and they are even easier to obtain than those of other Tao lineages. Once this matter is resolved, we must continue gathering information on spirit artifacts. For now, focus your efforts on investigating Master Beiyin." He dismissed Li Jiangqian and wrote the letter to Ning Wan. Then, he sealed the grand formation and took out a talisman pill. After wrapping it in divine ability, he swallowed it. Li Ziming had taken spirit pills more than once since breaking through to the Purple Mansion realm. Even the finest of them only stirred his divine abilities slightly, inching forward like a thin donkey pulling a heavy millstone. Yet upon taking the talisman pill, his divine ability seemed to connect to some unseen aura and immediately grew restless. Boom! The spiritual energy provided by the talisman pill was but a drop in the ocean for a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, yet it was as though some barrier had been opened. His divine ability began circulating of its own accord. Delighted, Li Ziming swiftly swallowed a Qilin Radiance Illumination pill. Mana within his body supported the divine ability as boundless radiance burst forth. Chapter 1380, Chunyi I. Spleetered Island. The Azure Pond sect had rotated several groups of personnel on Spleetered Island. The many tall pillars erected years ago by Ning Hijing had long since been melted down and replaced with newly planted groves of trees. Several lofty peaks had been turned into pine forests, with small pavilions standing gracefully among them. A young man in black robes held a sword as he stood in the pavilion. Its blade gleamed with golden brilliance, and 6 streaks of golden light circled at his side, trailing long streams of radiance. He lifted his brows and let out a breath as he faced the resplendent rising sun. Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators are indeed different. This man was Li Zhuluo, who had come to Spleetered Island. He had already emerged from seclusion, broken through to Foundation Establishment Realm, and achieved the gold-feathered beast. Now that he had left Moongaze Lake, he was high-spirited and full of vigor. As he waited in the pavilion, a woman in blue robes walked slowly along the path, carrying a swaddled infant in her arms. Yunking, Li Zhuluo turned and nodded to her. The woman smiled gently. Reaching the table, she handed the child to him and took out a jade flask to pour him tea. Li Zhuluo received the child and thanked her, then turned to look at the baby. The woman in blue sat quietly by the table, following his gaze. This woman in blue was Pang Yunking. Li Zijai had searched several times on his behalf before the two finally took a liking to one another. She was from the Pang family of Bamboo Creek Island, a family under the governance of Chunyi Dao, and was currently cultivating at the Azure Pond sect. His father Li Chenghui had not played much of a role in the matter of marriage. After the Taoist master returned to Moongaze Lake and Li Zhuluo emerged from seclusion, he took his leave and came to the island. He had then entered seclusion again after taking medicinal pills. By then, Li Zhuluo's major affairs, whether his foundation establishment realm or his marriage, had already been arranged. Li Zijai had sought out many potential families for Li Zhuluo, from the northern sea to the southern sea. Numerous families had hoped to attach themselves, and there was no shortage of beauties. Some families were in trouble and came seeking a lifeline, while others simply arranged meetings between peers to size one another up. After looking through them, Li Zhuluo had ultimately chosen Pang Yunking. There was nothing particularly remarkable about the arrangement. The Pang family of Bamboo Creek Island had long been under Chunyi Dao, with a stable inheritance. Pang Yunking had only been accepted as a new disciple after the Ning family had taken control of the Azure Pond sect. Her master was Lin Wuning, a trusted confidant of the Ning family. She came quietly, and Li Zhuluo recognized her good temperament. Since the two families were well matched, the marriage was settled. Later, they moved to Spleetered Island and were blessed with a child, the current eldest grandson of the fourth lineage, Li Jiangchen. Although Li Zhuluo had a child with her, there was still little conversation between them. Pang Yunking had never been talkative.
Aside from tending to the child, she seized every moment to cultivate and had no time for idle chatter. Though quiet, she had her own path of cultivation and few other concerns. If she heard a word or two of affection, she would stammer awkwardly. In the end, the two were more like Dao companions who merely discussed cultivation. Now that Li Zhuluo had emerged from seclusion to practice spell arts, he took care of Li Jianchen. This was their usual arrangement and had happened more than once. After waiting a moment, Pang Yongqing offered an apologetic word, lowered her delicate brows, and took her leave, clearly hurrying back into seclusion. Perhaps most of the Dao companions among the great families of the world were just like this. Li Zhuluo was already accustomed to this. He lifted Li Jianchen in his arms and walked around the courtyard. Seeing a black-robed, middle-aged man approach, he quickly raised his head and said, "Uncle Wushou, this is." Time had left few marks on Li Wushou. He looked much the same as before. After saluting, he said in a deep voice, "The pavilion master invites you." Li Zhuluo hurried to his feet and glanced around. Seeing no one else nearby, he had no choice but to hand the child to Li Wushou and replied, "I will go at once." This made Li Wushou jump in fright. He fumbled as he caught the child, completely at a loss. The baby began to wail loudly, and he felt utterly overwhelmed, while Li Zhuluo had already hurried away. Li Zhuluo made his way up the peak, where a dignified man in a feathered robe sat. Li Zhuluo quickly bowed and said respectfully, "Greetings, grandfather." Li Zijai lifted his brows and smiled, speaking softly, "Come." He invited Li Zhuluo to sit, then began, "You must have heard the news from the Southern Sea in March of last year. Several Purple Mansion Realm cultivators besieged Maha Beoking. If not for the Buddhist land coming to his aid and the temple master of Great Konghai Temple watching, he would not even have had the chance to reincarnate. When Maha fell in that battle, and only 3 of the 5 merciful ones survived. Although Beoking escaped, he was gravely wounded and can no longer stir trouble. The various factions then divided up the Southern Sea. Now Taoist Master Qiuhu has stepped in to coordinate. After careful discussion with Taoist Master Zhosheng of Shawang Kingdom, they have exchanged for northern Dan Island. Though 10,000-mile Stone Pond is no longer ours, it remains a key defensive position. Li Zijai continued softly, "Taoist Master Qiuhu has sent people to garrison it." Oh. In one hand, Tantai Jin submitted a memorial recommending family uncle Yuanqin. On the other hand, he used his seclusion to attempt a breakthrough to the Purple Mansion realm as a reason to decline the position of sect master. The seat now stands vacant, and there are many voices. When Taoist Master Qiuhu asked who should fill the vacancy, Tantai Jin strongly recommended me. Li Zhuluo raised his head and said, "Grandfather's strength and reputation are unmatched. No one in the sect would object. There have long been such voices." Tantai Jin. Li Zijai waved his hand and said, "Tantai Jin may speak well, but I cannot become the sect master." I replied to Taoist Master Qiuhu and recommended Si Tongyi instead. The Taoist master is understanding and will not force me. However, once Si Tongyi becomes sect master of the Azure Pond sect, Qin Xian, Lin Wuning, and the others will surely rise to high positions. Yongqing is Lin Wuning's disciple. I have asked him to transfer people to Mushroom Forest Plain, not far from Moongaze Lake. You and your wife can cultivate there and still attend to family matters. Li Zhuluo hurriedly bowed and assented, then asked, "And father and grandfather on this side?" Li Zijai shook his head and replied, "Judging by the timing, your father will soon emerge from seclusion. With the Yang family and what I have left behind, he can cultivate steadily. Sending you away now is also due to the changing situation. I do not wish to remain on Spleetered Island any longer." Li Zhuluo was momentarily stunned and asked, "Grandfather intends?" Li Zijai let out a faint sigh. His cultivation had remained at the late Foundation establishment realm for a long time and had already reached its limit. Over the years, his mastery of arts and techniques had steadily risen to a certain height, but it had gradually slowed. He feared he could not improve further without greater support. He was unwilling to take the position of sect master of Azure Pond. Spleetered Island was bringing fewer and fewer benefits and had even become unpaid labor for the Azure Pond sect. After a long moment, his thoughts stirred. Since his cultivation had remained unchanged for years, Li Zijai finally decided to leave this place. Li Ziming had written letters over the years as well. Though the Supreme Yang Dao lineage had clearly stated that the Heavenly Glow Dao lineage was rare, with few inheritances even among ancient lineages, what cultivator did not aspire to reach the Purple Mansion realm, especially one like Li Zijai, who was only a single step away? As news arrived one after another of others entering seclusion to attempt the Purple Mansion realm, Li Zijai could no longer remain idly in the mountains. One branch of the Heavenly Glow Dao lineage of the world emerged from Nuoxia, while the other rose from Xia Mountain.
If I am to seek a path to break through to the Purple Mansion realm, I likely must visit Xia Mountain of the Dragon Clan. Whether it was our predecessor Lingu Xia or the Taoist who cultivated the Dawn Dew gathering technique, in the end they lacked proper methods and forcibly broke through around Xia Mountain. There must be clues there. As for my post at Spleetard, I have already held it for a third term. Had it been another cultivator, he would have reaped great benefits by now. A year ago, I requested to relinquish the duty of guarding Spleetard and asked to return home to visit. Taoist Master Qiuhu has already granted permission. He took a sip of tea. I have sent a letter home. The Taoist Master has already entered seclusion. I will ride the Dawn Rayfish back to the lake to take a look and seek his guidance, then leave the mainland and travel across the 4 seas to search for the Heavenly Glow Dao lineage. In truth, Li Zijai still had concerns. He needed to personally ask Li Ziming about the meaning of that fragment. It was something that could neither be spoken of to outsiders nor written in a letter. Li Zhuoluo could only bow and say, "I only hope for your safe return." Li Zijai waved his hand and rose with his hands clasped behind his back, looking free and unrestrained as he replied, "Once I have arranged matters for you in Chenghui, my heart will be at ease. When my father sent me into the sect, his only wish was for me to shelter the family. When the Taoist master achieved the Purple Mansion realm, I already intended to leave. It was only because the family was unsettled and a few matters remained unresolved that I stayed on the island to watch over things. Now that the family is more stable, it is time for me to return and take a look."